Thanks for doing that. And so it's Municipal Affairs Code of Conduct feedback, I guess we could call it. And I have a closed meeting item called Personnel CAO Updates. Yep, 12.5.
Yeah, 12.5.
Okay, any other amendments? I will call the vote then. All in favor? That's carried. All right, tonight with the all the talk and rumble about emergency medical services we hear commonly in our province, and many letters, many advocacy groups, lobby groups, resolutions, whatever they might be, that are on the table in the provincial forum. We're pleased to welcome, we've already invited them, and we're pleased to welcome Randy Briska, who's the Executive Director of Operations of Calgary Zone. And we have Chris Baker, who's the District Manager for our area here. So we would welcome you up to the mic and look forward to, I'm sure, I would believe, and I shouldn't just believe that you've done this many times already. And I really we always appreciate that you're here with us to provide some information and take questions or council may have.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, we really appreciate the opportunity. My name is Randy Bricks. I'm the Associate Executive Director for EMS Operations in the Calgary Zone. Chris Baker is with me. He's my district manager. He's actually accountable for all services in the district, which includes the town of Didsbury. So we're very pleased to be here. We're going to give you a quick presentation. It's going to speak a little bit about the data, but really today is an opportunity for us to talk to all of you and have a dialogue about what you're hearing about EMS, how we can improve service delivery in your town and surrounding areas, and talk to you about some of the challenges we face and what we're doing about them from an EMS perspective. You're going to get to hear them firsthand and ask us any questions you feel is appropriate at that time. So thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity. I'm going to pass it over to Chris. Chris is going to do the presentation, and then we'll entertain your questions after that. Thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Randy. Good evening, everybody. As Randy mentioned, my name is Chris Baker. I am the manager for District 3 within the Calgary Zone for EMS, which encompasses Didsbury. I've had the chance to meet a few people in this room before, and I thought before we'd get into the presentation, I'd just take the opportunity to thank everybody who on council or involved with the town who's had the opportunity to work with EMS. We had an opportunity here over the last few months where the hospital is undergoing some renovations, and we've looked to try to be good partners within the community and have reached out to the town of Didsbury, and we've managed to get an arrangement together where we're able to actually co-locate our units and our people right now in the new fire hall, which I must say is a very nice facility. The staff are very appreciative of it. I know that's helping expedite some of the processes and the work that's happening in the hospital, and so I'd just like to thank you all very, very much for being able to be open to have those discussions, because I think good things come from that. So, and I think the proof's in the pudding over there right now. We just had the chance to go and talk to the staff, and nothing but good words coming from them. So thank you very much. So starting off with just this presentation here, on the first slide, this is just a bit of our objectives for this evening. We'd like to talk about maybe what the goals are going to be of the presentation. And as you can see there, we'll talk a bit about the resources that we currently have in Didsbury, the call volume, which ambulances are serving the community, and then also which communities and the areas that are being served by the Didsbury ambulance. And we'll bring forward just a little bit of data so you can sort of maybe conceptualize how often we're leaving the town, how often other ambulances are coming into the town. We'll talk about where we transport our patients to and give you a bit of a sense of where our patients move throughout the entire community and within the Calgary Zone. We will touch on our EMS response times within Didsbury, and then some of our current challenges and some of our mitigation strategies that we've been employing over the last number of months to overcome some of our issues that we've been having within the system. And then there'll be an opportunity at the end to have some discussion and answer any questions if they come up. So for the goals for this presentation, this truly is about sharing information about EMS and letting anybody here in this room who has any questions be able to ask those questions. By addressing our concerns, I think that we continue to be good community partners, and we're always looking for opportunities for improvement. So any time that suggestions might come up, or ideas, or perhaps even that grows from a concern being brought forward, we're always into listening to what those either solutions, discussions, or concerns might be. All right, so let's very briefly, we'll talk about the EMS resources that we currently have stationed in Didsbury. So the town of Didsbury is serviced by a 24-hour assembled unit, meaning that there is no downtime in the number of hours which staff are assigned to work on that unit. So it's staffed by 2 12-hour shifts within a 24-hour period, and that is advanced life support within the town. So that means that we do have fully qualified paramedics that can provide advanced life support skills and advanced airway management medications as well too. So typically, sometimes when we're in the smaller communities, we talk about our resources being on peak times. That's not a concern here in Didsbury, but I think it's important just to sort of touch base on the fact that we are supported in Carstairs with an ambulance that works from 9 till 9, and we're supported by a full complement of other 24-hour ambulances north of town in Olds. So within the community, there's not just the EMS service that we consider being a support service. Obviously, the Didsbury District Health Services, or the hospital, is part of that support network for us as well too. We do employ a medical first response model. So Didsbury Fire Department is a co-response partner with us when it comes to medical calls within the community. That support is integral to a large component of our ability to make sure that we are supporting our citizens within the community. We do have support from our air ambulance provider in the province, which is STARS, and this they do come out to this community fairly frequently. When I say frequently, we're talking sub-dozen numbers, but they are available to respond out to this location without distance being a problem. And we also utilize a community AED program as well too. This is really integral to a lot of quick responses to sudden cardiac arrests that are occurring outside of the hospital. There is a website that's up on the screen here, the heartsafe.ca website. We continue to encourage all of our communities that anybody who does have an AED within the community to register that with the HeartSafe site. What that does is allows us to immediately activate that AED, get somebody to grab that AED and get it to the scene to a patient that might be suffering from a sudden cardiac arrest outside of an ambulance, or with the fire department assisting with a response. The dispatch center actually has access to that information, and they can help citizens get that equipment to them. So it is part of an integral part of that sort of chain of survival that we employ outside of the hospital. So that's a bit of a summary about what we have for our resources within Didsbury. Taking a look at our call volumes, so this is from April 1st of 2021 until the end of March of this year. As we separate it into quarters, you can see up there that our numbers typically run from about 250 to 300, and we land within those numbers of responses into the community for each quarter. So a total of 1,129 responses were captured within the community in the district where the Didsbury Ambulance Services. So this slide here talks a little bit about which units are responding into Didsbury. And I like to preface this a little bit with an understanding of our system. Pardon me, it's a bit of a fluid system. We utilize a closest ambulance response model with a number of layers that are sort of supplemented within there to make sure we're getting the right resource to our calls. And so if an ambulance is driving by the community and a call comes into the community, that ambulance will respond to that call. So when you take a look at the numbers up here, into Didsbury, the ambulance that's stationed out of here is actually doing about 40% of the call volume, where 14% of that call volume is being serviced from the Olds ambulances. Carstairs taking in about 10% of that, and then our Calgary units are actually servicing about 9% of the call volume up into Didsbury as well too. So you might look at those numbers
Councillor, go ahead. You're going to say, go ahead. The percentages don't add up?
Yeah, I'll
You'll get to
there
that. Great.
So 2 points to this slide. The first point being is that it might be a little deceiving thinking that all of these units are responding from the community in which they are based out of to get to the calls up here, where that may be true for a number of those calls. A number of these calls are being serviced by the ambulance because it was actually closest. They may have been clearing up from another call, or they've transported somewhere else and they're just closest to the call. The second piece is that we have another number of outlying ambulances that are surrounding the community, such as Linden, et cetera, Sundre, et cetera, et cetera. Each one of those might be coming in to do a number of calls within the community. We're only reporting on the top 4 that are coming into the community. Otherwise, the list could get very, very long. There's where your 100% would get up to. Fair enough? Yeah, no, yeah.
It's AHS math.
That's right, exactly. So another contrasting slide to this as well too is the communities in the area that is served by the Didsbury ambulance. And again, speaking to the ambulance that is stationed directly out of Didsbury. Again, these numbers won't add up to 100%. If we take a look at it, that the top areas where we're actually, and this will be a point that we talked about here as well too, the Didsbury ambulance was doing 36% of its call volume inside Calgary. 23% of that was actually in Didsbury, and then 8% within Mountain View County and 8% within Olds. And we'll discuss the 36% in Calgary, but to understand how that number occurs, if you do a call here in Didsbury and you transport your patient into the city of Calgary, and the city of Calgary has no available ambulances, that ambulance is getting pulled into service inside Calgary. And when that occurs, from time to time, it's very difficult to break free from that vortex, shall we say, if a high call volume area is pulling an ambulance constantly back into it. We'll talk about some of the mitigation strategies where we're working very hard to change these numbers. So, but that gives you an idea for last year of sort of what those percentages looked like. Transport destinations, and I think this might shed some more light and, again, sort of compare to why those numbers were maybe a little bit disproportionate in the previous slide. Once that ambulance transports to another community, such as Calgary, and they clear up from there, they become available. So you can see that 56% of the time, the ambulance in Didsbury is actually transporting into Calgary. Again, there's a number of reasons for it. Different hospitals, different urgent care centers, and even different hospitals within Calgary can take care of different types of emergencies. And we have very specialized destination transport guidelines. So if you're suffering from a stroke, you will be going into the Foothills Hospital. You'll be bypassing the closest hospital to get to that definitive care. So 39% of the time, though, we are actually transporting to the Didsbury Hospital. And then you can see about 1% of the time out into Red Deer, and currently about 0.5% of the time into the Airdrie Urgent Care Center as well, too. Okay? So if we start talking about those numbers, wondering where we sit as to numbers and percentages of time that we're actually in the community, serving the community, referencing again the comment that I made earlier on about the fact that when you get transported into the city of Calgary, next thing you know, you're doing multiple calls within the city of Calgary, and we're trying to utilize the rest of our resources to provide the coverage within various other suburban rural corridors. We realized that the best option for us was to get those suburban rural ambulances out of our city as fast as we possibly can. We realize and recognize the risk that is associated with not providing the appropriate coverage to our suburban rural communities. The best way to do that is get the actual trucks that are based out of those communities back. So we've employed a number of strategies, and this goes back to beginning of February when we started seeing the creep get very, very, very high as to the number of calls that our suburban rural ambulances were doing in Calgary. And we implemented an initiative back then to, once an ambulance was clear from the site within Calgary, to get them back into their community. So we would bypass any of the potential calls that are in Calgary at the time unless they were critical or emergent, like immediately life-threatening, and get those crews responding back into, or reporting back into their districts. And as you can see by the numbers here, if we take a look at the Didsbury numbers, pardon me, I'll reference my sheet because my eyes are not as good as they once were. From the time that the data was pulled, if you went all the way to week 12, you could see that 20 times that week we actually pulled that ambulance into Calgary to do calls. And you can see line items where there's actually no number. That means that there were 0 occurrences within that week. So we've managed to utilize this strategy, and you can take a look at all of the various communities. Airdrie is another good example, where at the time we had 159 occurrences. We've actually reduced that by over half. So we're working very hard to get those ambulances back out into the community, and we've had great success with these initiatives. So I know that some of these numbers might be a little bit daunting when you take a look at the numbers, and you're actually wondering how many is that actually translating into within the city of Calgary. We most certainly can get into some of that data if we need to, but the reality is here is that reducing that factor, getting it down to as low as we possibly can, should be almost one-to-one with the amount of times you come into Calgary should be the amount of times that you're getting back out into the rural communities.
So if you look at it there, the far right-hand side, the 52-week average, Didsbury was coming into the city 14 times a week, okay? The red line shows when we initiated this process, and you can see we took it from 14 down to 2, 1, 4, 1, 3, 2, 1. And most times the crew is not coming into Calgary at all. Or sorry, I shouldn't say not coming into Calgary, but they're coming into Calgary, dropping their patient off, and then returning to community. And we just spoke with the crew today. The ambulance has been in community the entire day. And based on that, so they haven't got drawn into Calgary. And I have updated numbers on this that I'll speak to you later about. Thanks, Chris. Sorry about that.
No, absolutely. Okay. Yes.
I don't see Carstairs on the list, but my eyes are bad. I couldn't see it.
Yeah,
Did you say Carstairs has an ambulance?
Yes, it does.
And so what kind of numbers?
So Carstairs is not on the list because it's not making enough of, those are the top 10. It's below the top 10 as far as numbers. Okay. Excellent point, though. We actually had to, there's 11 on that one if you look at it. We actually added Canmore to it because Canmore Council had the same question. How many times am I coming in? And we said, well, the reason why you're not on the list because you're not in the top 10. So we actually added to show them. So Carstairs does come in, same as Didsbury. There is the opportunity where the truck can come in and do a call, but it's so rare now, it doesn't even report it, and we don't report anymore, which is a very positive thing. That's the step in the right direction that we've made as an organization to get your resource back to your community. You're welcome, Councillor.
So our response times for Didsbury. So these response times that you're seeing up here are reporting on the 50th and the 90th percentile, and they're going back to 2016 for comparative counts. What we're reporting on here are our Delta and Echo level responses. Those are our highest priority level responses that we have within communities. Typically, that is our benchmarking that we utilize, is where we're actually meeting those goals for achieving responses out to those critically ill patients. So on the far right, you can see that that's the actual count number. And if you take a look historically, going back from 2016 up until 2021, we had our 50th percentile had crept up by about a minute, and our 90th percentile had most certainly increased significantly since 2016 numbers. Right now, we're sitting at about that 7.5 minute response time, which again is about a 30-second increase into the overall response times for those calls. But our 90th percentile has started to come down as well too. So those two numbers, we continue to implement initiatives. However, to continue to keep them stable and not see that creep occurring. However, those numbers for this community are actually lower than a number of other communities, and we don't have the most current data up to this year to see what those new mitigation strategies are translating into our response times. We will have those numbers available, and we can report back on those, and that is most certainly something that we can provide to you. But as it sits right now, because we're only within a number of months of initiating a number of these strategies, I don't have those updated numbers for you.
And our reporting period, just to be clear, is in quarters. With the volume being so low, it's the best way to report in quarters because we get more of a number of calls that we can report on. because some of our, if we were reporting weekly, it's not generating enough calls in community to report and give you an accurate reflection of what's actually happening. I want to talk a little bit about what 50th and 90th percentile means, because everybody gets very confused. So 50th percentile, we talk about the 10-minute benchmark. So when we talk 50th percentile, that means 50% of the calls are below 10 minutes and 50% are above 10 minutes. When we talk the 90th percentile, which is 15 minutes, that says of that, 90% of the calls are below 15 minutes and 10% are above the 15-minute benchmark. And you can see if happens. So I'll give you an example. There's 2 calls that come in simultaneously into the community. It does happen. So what happens is the Didsbury ambulance goes and they've got, say, a chest pain. They have to take them to Calgary. They're out of community. The next closest resource will come either from Carstairs, Olds coming in. That's generally where you get that 90th percentile response, because we're coming from outside of the community. Most often the truck that's coming in here, if it's stationed out of here, gets a call out of Didsbury, we're going to be on scene in less than 10 minutes, I can guarantee you, even in the middle of the night. That's how quick we are here. So that's a positive thing, but does everybody understand what the 50th and 90th is? Because people get very confused on that. And I'm not saying it's you guys, it's me. I have to keep reviewing this as we go forward. So just to let you know, please, if you have questions, fire away. We're more than happy to answer. Go ahead, Chris.
No, thank you. Okay. So we believe in being transparent, and as you alluded to earlier on, there's been a number of discussions within the province about the state of EMS. We are here to let you know that we're not ignoring any of those, and in fact that there is a number of initiatives that are ongoing right now to deal with the volume of EMS calls that has crept up into the system over the last number of years. Just so you have a sense and an understanding as to what the impact on EMS, or where the impact on EMS has truly come from, within the last 2 years, we have seen a 30% sustained increase in our call volume. That is, normally we are sitting around the 6% sort of growth increase phase, and we've ramped up significantly. So obviously with that comes an impact to service, and so we continue to try to find ways as we continue to build out the service to make sure that we're matching that demand, is to continue to look for efficiencies within the system to make sure that we are able to actually meet the service demand levels without impacting response times and access to care as much as we possibly can. So what have we done? Well, we have looked at a number of different initiatives when it comes to transferring patients between sites to reduce the strain on our interfacility. We have an interfacility transfer group that takes care of transferring patients between facilities directly. They typically don't work on the emergency side, but we have actually utilized them on the emergency side when we've been pressed. But we've initiated a bunch of initiatives to make sure that we're actually sending people in ambulances that need to go from site to site that actually require an ambulance. So if they're able to be transported through a family member, or perhaps there's an other alternative transport mode, we've been sort of exploring those options and utilizing that to save our ambulances for those people that truly need those services. We've also been triaging our low acuity 911 calls. So a number of the 911 calls that do come into the system truly don't necessarily need an ambulance, or don't need an ambulance emergently. So we've been utilizing a system with our dispatch center where we use a physician that's part of our online medical control group to continue to evaluate calls as they come in. So when our system is under a very, a surge stress point, we can triage those acuity calls and make sure that we have ambulances available for our life-saving, typically those life-saving events that we need to respond to. Regarding our interfacility transfers as well too, one of the things that we've added into the community in Airdrie is that we've actually placed a dedicated interfacility transfer ambulance in Airdrie. And it's a bit of a hybrid system that we're utilizing with that transfer truck. The idea is that transfer truck will be utilized through the corridor, the Highway 2 corridor, to complete interfacility trips that are required. So they're coming out of the Didsbury Hospital or the Airdrie Urgent Care Center, and we're stopping or reducing the amount of times that we have to use the emergency ambulance out of the site or out of the community in order to make that transfer happen. And the second thing that we're utilizing that ambulance for is a bit of a backup ambulance. So when they're not on an interfacility transfer and perhaps multiple calls come in all at once, we can utilize that ambulance to be a first response emergency ambulance out into the community. Typically, we separate our two working groups. We have our emergency ambulances, we have our interfacility transport ambulances, and this ambulance sort of sits on the sort of right in between where both of those systems merge together. So that's been a new addition, and that ambulance went into effect in April, so just about a month ago.
April 25th.
Yeah.
Yep.
Again, we haven't had the chance to pull the data on that yet, but anecdotally talking through the district supervisors in our dispatch center, we are getting good value from that ambulance resource as well too.
Since I had friends and family working on the ambulance like 35 and 40 years ago, they had the same problem with getting to the hospital, being stuck in emergency and sitting there, two people and an ambulance and taking it away from our area.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't they have a person there that they can hand them off to? You talk about dropping a patient off. Can you drop a patient off and head back home, or do you still have to sit there in emergency and wait until somebody finally comes around hours and hours later, tying up the ambulance and two people?
It's a great question, and this has been an issue that has been plaguing the system for a number of years. It could be a very long conversation, but I'll be brief and see if I can shed a bit of light on that, if that's all right. When we take care of a patient, we have an obligation to maintain that care for that patient. We cannot just abandon that patient necessarily. And so when we arrive at the hospitals, if that patient still requires ongoing care and they don't have the staff or the facilities or the ability to provide that care, we have to continue to maintain that care for that patient. That's an obligation that we continue to have. The reasons and the facts that impact that and our inability to transfer at the hospitals is complex. It's not an emergency department issue. It is not just a hospital issue. It truly is a bit of a systems issue. So do we continue to have that issue in Calgary? We do. But we've actually worked out with our primary care sites in Calgary some good initiatives to reduce the amount of ambulances that at any one time will ever be held at a site. We've also worked very, very hard to increase the movement of patients through the emergency department to make sure that we constantly have access into those beds so we can offload our patients and get our ambulances back into community. One of the greatest initiatives that we've just managed to get off the ground here within the last 2 weeks is an integrated operations center within the Calgary zone that is staffed by EMS staff. It's also staffed by other healthcare staff. And they are, what that center is doing is that they are monitoring any of our EMS transports as well as the state of all of our hospitals at any one given time. As you go back to my comment earlier on, we're looking at great efficiencies in order to try to maintain all of our benchmarks. That is one of the things that we're utilizing is now this integrated operations center in order to pick our best sites for our patients so we don't backlog at one particular site. The volume of EMS and the volume of walk-in patients at our health sites throughout the Calgary zone, again, is exponential. And we still have to have a duty to respond to those. And when I say we, I'm talking AHS. EMS is one component of that piece. So to answer your question, we have had great success over the last number of months in reducing the amount of time that we're waiting in the hallways with our patients. The problem still does exist, but all of health is working to try to get EMS back into the community as soon as we possibly can.
So to add, Councillor, two things we've done. We've put a cap now on the amount of ambulances that will get tied up in the emergency departments. So we've actually said at the foothills, we've said 4 is the max, 3 at the Peter Lougheed, 3 at the Rocky View, and 2 at the South Health Campus. And we're holding the hospitals accountable to that to support us. Secondly, the next thing that the hospitals have come up with is that they've now put what they call EMS offload RNs into place to take over patient care from us in an effort to reduce the amount of time we spend in the hospitals. This is brand new. It's come in the past 2 weeks. We don't really have a lot of good data that I can concrete support to and show you, but what I can tell you anecdotally, the amount of times we are in a situation where no ambulances are available in Calgary is decreased significantly, and the amount of resources that are returning to community and available has increased. So have we solved the problem? The answer is no. Have we improved the problem with some mitigation strategies? The answer is yes. So we haven't knocked it out of the park. It was maybe a double. That's all I would have to say. So I hope that answers your question. The challenge we face, and we're in a system that's very complex and burdened across from EMS throughout the entire healthcare system, and that will be no surprise to anybody in this room. The system is under great strain. Chris only controls the EMS side. We have to work with our colleagues in health, which we are doing right now, and we are achieving success. There's a lot of attention on EMS, good, bad, and indifferent, and the fact we're here talking about it, it's a good thing, because if we get the support of the communities, that's going to help us get EMS challenges to the front. And that's what we're doing, and that's why we're here. And we're going to commit to you at the end to come back yearly and speak with you and update you on how we're doing, because I think that's important. We need you to advocate for us, for my staff, our communities. Sorry, Chris.
No, thanks.
Councillor Bowden has a question, and then Councillor Windsor, and I'd like everybody to use the usual process of in knowledge to ask a question, so that we're making sure we keep the order of who puts their hand up. So, Councillor Bowden, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. First off, I had the pleasure of using your service. You might be familiar with the term going in hot.
Yes, sir.
So, anyway, the two attendants were top-notch, and the people on the front lines are really, really good at what they do. The problem is, I see, is that centralizing the system creates an issue, and that is not your issue, it's those above you who created this process whereby you got a Pittsburgh ambulance going to Calgary. I want my ambulance here, Adam on that one. My wife took me to the hospital, not the ambulance, because we were fearful that they weren't around. We didn't know.
Right.
That's a bad move for anybody to do that.
Yep.
Right? However, there was success. Aside
Yeah.
the vehicles could use a little bit of suspension.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, I don't think centralizing the system is effective. Just my personal opinion. Response times, I guess that's where the professionals come in and give us what they determine. That's fine. Have you ever addressed the idea that all the way up the line from Airdrie to Red Deer, the towns are split by a railway. So we have half the people on one side of the railway tracks and half on the other side. Have they made any thoughts of mitigating that issue so that if a train comes through, you're stuck. It won't be 10 minutes, it'll be 20 minutes. And in a hard situation, that's, you might as well order flowers because you're done, you know. I guess my issue is that EMS it's the top end that's creating the issue. I don't think it's effective. I think it's a bad model, in my opinion. I'm sure that within yourselves you've talked about it and can consider better ways, but through leadership you're not able to do it. That's unfortunate. And that's basically what my comments are. But I appreciate the two of you coming, and you will have my support always. The working guys in EMS are very important to me and our community. One thing you said, I'm trying to remember, that the calls have gone out. Is that possible because the population is aging. So it's going to even increase as the years go on. So they have to be prepared to deal with that particular number.
Thank you, Councillor, for the questions. I'll start by answering. So the railway tracks, the answer is simply no. We haven't the ability at this point to put an extra resource on each side of the tracks. We've looked at mitigation strategies on how best to do it, but we haven't worked with CP or CN and to address some of those areas. So I'm being completely transparent with you on that. As far as, sorry, your last question, my apologies, I forgot, was the, the suspension part, sorry, that part isn't, we're working on it. Was what you answered?
We're talking with the aging population. Yes. And the increase to our call volumes.
So I'll speak to that. Our normal growth in EMS per year for the past 10 years has been 6 to 8%. Okay, and that's been predictable. So if you hear it's not, it has been predictable. In March of 2021, we increased 30%. Again, predictable. What we didn't bank on was it coming as early as it did, and that was with COVID. Okay, that just bumped it up a few years. So to your point, we know the aging population is causing a huge demand on our service. That's happening. It just expedited it sooner than we were prepared to deal with it. And it caught the entire healthcare system off guard. So that's being transparent, and that's what we're seeing today. So you've probably heard about the 10-point plan EMS is putting in place provincially. These are some of the things that we're talking to you about today, about how we're going to mitigate that growth. Adding some new resources, doing business smarter in other ways is other ways of doing it. We just don't, I will never say no to money and resources, okay? But I also have to be realistic, right? Given our economic times, I got to work within that. We got to do things better. And that's what we're trying to do, both sides. We're asking for additional resources, but we're looking to do things better, more efficient, more effective.
Okay, we have Councilor Windsor, and what I'm going to do is let the gentleman complete the presentation, because I think you might answer a lot of that in the presentation, and hold all your questions for the end, but go ahead, because I acknowledge you.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, it's a point as much as anything, and that is you mentioned, or your focus has been on the city hospitals and the transfer time and handing off the patient and EMS being in the halls for an extended period of time. I think that it's important, and I'm sure you're already aware of this, that it happens here as well.
Yeah, it does.
I haven't had experience in Disbury, but I have had experience in Olds, where EMS has been tied up there for extended periods of time on several occasions. And so I just wanted to make sure that you were thinking also not just of the urban hospitals, the sprawl hospitals, but also our rural hospitals that suffer the same problem.
You're absolutely correct. Sometimes during these presentations, when we're having the chance to address numbers and percentages, I tend to be very focused on those pieces that have the greatest impact. Our adult sites, the frequency and the numbers that we're transporting to them, they tend to have the biggest impact, but we're aware that these holds are occurring. This is not just regionally, this is not just within Alberta, this is North American wide. We've reached out to and have great networks throughout, not just Canada, but North America to discuss these issues, and these increases in patient volumes and access into healthcare through hospitals and various sites are happening everywhere. And so we're continuing to try to find ways to do good business. A lot of our mitigation strategies have spawned from other conversations that we've had with other municipalities and other districts and other jurisdictions that have come up with some really good ways to try to manage through these pieces. So we're well aware that it's occurring everywhere. One of the things that we do, and just to take 2 seconds to address this, because I think it's really important, is to know that EMS is directly connected with the hospital in Didsbury, and we have constant communication occurring between our system and their system, and that's through myself and through the manager at the hospital. And we're always talking about these issues, right down to the point where we'll get into the weeds if there was a very specific situation that occurred that needs to be addressed, and we'll talk more system level as well too. So we're trying to keep an eye on everything and trying to get ahead of any of the problems that might be impacting any of our ability to provide that level of service through those relationships as well too. So we are aware that it does occur, and we're doing those pieces to try to get in front of this stuff as well too.
So please proceed with your presentation.
No, fair enough.
Finish it, because it's.
I will be mindful of time here as well too, for sure. So let me see if I can answer perhaps any other pending questions that might be coming up, but there's most certainly an opportunity to address any further questions that do come up at the end here. So we've had the chance to talk about prolonged hospital waits. The one thing that we didn't really talk about too much is just from raising some awareness. That comes from communities, but that also comes from within health. You can imagine any job that anybody is doing, if you're not looking at the downstream effect or the upstream effect of your systems, you might not be realizing where pinch points are occurring. So we've been lobbying internally as well too to make sure everybody understands where the impacts are in EMS, and to recognize the fact that there's nobody that can replace EMS work. We are the only ones within health that can do this type of work, and so we need to be on a priority list somewhere to make sure that we're getting back out into our communities. I think the rest of it we sort of spoke to regarding our hospital waits. Fluctuating EMS staffing levels and hiring of staff. So there's a number of impacts that have occurred over the last few years. You can imagine the strain that this type of work has put on our people. We're nothing without our people. We're just a bunch of bun wagons parked in a back lot somewhere. And so the work that we're demanding of our people is very, very hard work. And so that has an impact on our staffing levels. As we continue to try to grow and mitigate these staffing levels, we don't have a magic box that just produces paramedics. These are highly trained staff that need to go through schooling. They need to get some experience. They need to be able to understand the work that they're doing before we can hire them on. So these are long-term processes. But what I can assure you is that we have been very active in recruiting and hiring to make sure that our staffing levels don't drop to a point where we're not able to maintain our business continuity. So that's a piece that is being reported on internally. Weekly, we discuss this piece, and we're constantly readjusting our strategies to make sure that our staffing levels are maintained. Suburban rural resources coming into the city. I think we've reviewed a lot of that so far. So that piece there, I think, I don't know if there's any further information I can provide to that unless there's some specific questions. But those are our biggest challenges right now. I talked about some of our mitigation strategies, and I apologize if I got a little bit off track. But really, in a nutshell, we are making very concerted efforts to maintain our staffing levels. We're making very concerted efforts to get our ambulances out of hospitals. Again, those efforts are being placed on the importance of having ambulances in suburban rural communities, and recognizing that one ambulance in the town of Didsbury, when it's out, you are down to 0. When it's in, you're at 100%, and that's a very difficult number to maintain someplace in between, and that our response times into the community outside of Didsbury can be extremely long. That is a geography piece as well too, but none of that is lost on us. We're aware of those situations, and that's why we put the importance on managing our risk by maintaining our levels up here. We're working on great strategies to make sure that we are dispersing our patients appropriately within the community, trying to reduce taking a patient to a hospital, which results in a transfer. Anything that we can do that maintains the integrity of this system by being efficient ahead of the game are pieces that are in play right now. So I think that really does sort of sum up our greatest mitigation strategies. Randy, is there anything that I'm missing?
No, I think you've hit it. What we really want is to hear from you. I know we've had the opportunity, a few questions, but please, this is the opportunity for us to hear your concerns, hear your issues, talk about some stuff we have done, and if we haven't thought about it, to put it on our radar as stuff to do.
I will still take questions at the end. I wanted to see your phones.
Yeah, we are. We managed to get there. Yeah.
I thought you had more, and I was gonna. Good. It's not good. It's at the end. Thank you for the presentation. And yes, I see Councilor Quaid had her hand up, and then Councilor Bowser again.
Just a quick couple of questions. You know, your 50th and 90th percentiles, and one's 10 minutes and one's 15. What's the ultimate time for a small town with one ambulance?
So, excellent question. I actually spoke. I sit on the provincial advisory committee that's been set up by the minister, and the MLAs are chairing it. And I did a presentation today on response times, how we came to that. So there is no standard internationally. Okay, the idea behind response times was generated in the 1970s based on cardiac arrest data, in which they said if you can get to somebody in 8 minutes or less, their chance of survival improves every minute, okay, that it's less than 8 minutes. So we in EMS, not knowing better at the time, took that and said, this is the standard, okay, and we used it for all emergencies. What I can tell you is the evidence shows right now on all the evidence is that response times, it doesn't change mortality rate or death rate, whether you get there quicker or not. Now, you can counter that. We do know in trauma, stroke, and heart attacks, time does matter because it's muscle, whether it's the brain, the head, or in trauma. If we get them to a surgical facility in under an hour, that's where time matters. So there are time-dependent emergencies that we need to stick to targets on. But other than that, if you're having shortness of breath related to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, where you're a smoker for years, right? Does 8 minutes versus 10 make a difference? We don't know. And the answer is simply put, the data is not sufficient enough to say one way or another, and there is no standard. Internationally, Canadian-wise, that's why we picked what we did. It was based on the size of the community, what was, quite honestly, reasonable. And that's where you get the 10 and 15. And it's based on communities 10 and 15 is based on communities, I believe, less than 3,000, and so many kilometers away from the major urban centers. So there's all these definitions that go into it. Councillor, did that answer your question? Sorry.
Absolutely. Just one more quick one. You talked about a transfer ambulance that runs up and down the highways.
Yes.
Does it do transfers hospital to hospital inside Calgary?
No. So there's only one time where we'll do it. So we implemented this on April 25th, and we had a bit of a challenge because what was happening is the unit for your sector that runs along the 2 North corridor starts in Airdrie. It was going into Calgary to transfer that first transfer from either the Airdrie Urgent Care or the Didsbury Hospital where it picked up the patient. Unfortunately, they were getting stuck in the Calgary like our suburban rural emerge trucks were. We made a rapid change within a week of that happening, and we now say they're only for transfers along the Highway 2 corridor, which is Airdrie, Carstairs, Didsbury, and we'll even go to Olds and help those guys out too, So don't tell anybody that, okay? So, but that will give you an idea of what we do, and that way a call comes in, they do a transfer into the city, much like the emerge resources, they will be brought out back into the corridor so that they can keep emerge resources in community.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Bowser?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I guess, is it typical that on a call, the first one there is a fire truck, the second one is the police, last one there is the fire car, or the ambulance, typically. And that was just a side comment, but the main one is, you mentioned something about, when I talked about the railroad track splitting towns.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that there was with all due respect, that there was no discussion with the railroad. I would argue that the railroad doesn't enter into it. It's more that AHS has to make the decision to provide a second vehicle to reside on the other side of the tracks. It doesn't have anything to do with CPR or anybody, because they come and go as they please. You can't control them intensely, right?
Yeah.
So it's up to AHS to decide whether they want to support these communities with extra equipment so that we're covered on the west side as well as the east side of our town.
So, yeah, your point's well taken, Councillor. The answer simply is I don't have the budget to do that, the resources available, whether it's the physical ambulance to put in the community, the staff to put in the community, given the size and the population. So I'm doing the best, my staff, we're doing the best we can with the resources we have in place. I will continue, and I hope we will see the support of the communities to continue to lobby for more resources. But that's one area where I don't have control over, is the additional resources. So I will do with what I can the best of my ability, and my staff do that to the best of our ability to do that. So I'd love to put 2 ambulances in your community, and I'm going to be completely transparent. If I was going to do it, it wouldn't be here. I'd probably put it in another center where there's a higher call volume. And I'm sorry, I'm just being honest with you.
I think, and I do think it is reasonable to also just touch on the fact that Airdrie is a great example. When we do planning for communities that have multiple ambulances embedded within them, Airdrie most certainly was taken into account.
Yes.
The fact that we do have the railroad tracks that separate the community. And so that planning does go into place when the size of the community and the call volume supports having multiple units. We take into account a number of different criteria, and that is one of them as well too. And to your point, it is very disconcerting, and I've been there, the paramedic in an ambulance stuck at a train track waiting for an ambulance to pass. It is just as unnerving to the paramedics as it is to the patients on board. We do have a system, which is our real-time operations center, which is providing an overview of our entire system. When a crew is experiencing a situation like that, they are able to actually report it, and we're very quickly able to see if there's a better option to enhance our dispatching to one of those calls. Typically in a situation like that, we may increase our response times by a few minutes if we have to backtrack and take a secondary road to go around that to get behind the tail of an ambulance, or tail of a train. It does happen from time to time, and we do actively try to manage those calls as best we possibly can. The frequency of them happening is typically very low though. So actually getting obstructed by a train that provides a great impact to a call like that, they're typically very, very low in a community such as this size.
Other questions or comments? Just look at me like that. We're going. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Randy and Chris, I think what you're coming for is dialogue to see if we can give you some ideas and some conversation about the problems. And the problem that I have is that you are in it day in and day out, and you see the problems, you experience the problems, and for those of us other than being accident prone, I don't really see a lot of that. I've seen quite a bit through my mother and father, but essentially I don't see it every day, and it tends to, well, the mind has a wonderful thing about forgetting about pain and letting pain go, and so we forget about those things. So while you're here and asking for that dialogue, it's going to take a little time to absorb and come up with some ideas that might be of some assistance or might be useless. But it's it's going to take some time for those of us who aren't in it day in and day out to actually kind of analyze what we might have or might not have.
Good point, Councillor, and I want to address that because I think what I want to say is what we really need is your continued support in the medical first response side. I can't emphasize how valuable that is to us, especially when that resource gets pulled out of your community where we have multiple calls occurring in the community at the same time. We need the support of your fire resources, which are municipal resources. We need that support. I can't stress how valuable that is to us. The second thing, Chris spoke to it, if you guys are putting AEDs in the community, we need you to register those AEDs because when the caller calls dispatch, we automatically say, is there an AED available? And that comes up electronically on our screen. They will dispatch that AED out accordingly. So these are things that we need your help. I agree. This is, for us, this is the opening the dialogue with this council coming out. I want you to hear from us now going forward multiple times. I can't come out other than because I have to go to every other community at the same time. We will commit to coming out yearly, But what I can commit is Chris is available to deal with stuff in real time. Our supervisors are available to your community. If you have questions, instead of letting things burn and get to a point where it becomes a big issue over something that, quite honestly, we could have dealt with in real time. And that's what Chris is here for. He is here to say, I'm available for you. We're working through Ethan. Ethan will connect with us. Ethan will say, hey, Randy, we got a question on this, this, and that. Came up through council after they had an opportunity to discuss some stuff. That's where we're getting the information back, and we got to keep that pathway. We'll give you the formal presentation. We'll come out and tell you we're doing good or bad, and we're going to be transparent with you because, quite honestly, we haven't done a good job of that in AHS. Okay? That's why we're here tonight. We wanted to show you. We have challenges. Okay? You've seen right here, you're hearing it from us. We don't have the perfect system, and quite honestly, it's disheartening because I've grown up in EMS. I've been in it 40 years, right? It's frustrating to see where we are today. Some is we have control over, other we don't, but I'm not giving up. And that speaks to the quality of staff we have. You know, like we have really good staff that care about their community and want to do well for their community. We just had the privilege of meeting with 2 of them, and then the other crew was coming on shift, so we got to meet all 4. That tells me they're invested in this community, and you guys are lucky to have that quality of service in this community. And I take pride in that. And at the end here, it's not about Randy, it's not about Chris, it's actually about our staff and how good of a job they are doing under very difficult circumstances. And I just want to say thank you to all my staff. It's Paramedic Services Week this week. So hug a paramedic or wear a mask or something, you know, like while you're doing that.
Virtual
hug,
yeah.
Whatever you can do. But, you know, they need to hear that they're valued because they've been beaten up for 2 years straight. And the system has not been kind to them. I don't sleep at night, I'll be honest, because of some of the challenges we're facing in EMS. But for now, I actually do see a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's getting brighter and brighter. I hope it's not a train coming at me, but, you know, but just to be clear, you know, I'm a bit of a practical joker here, so you're going to have to put up with me. But, you know, I want you to hear from the people. I don't want you to be looking at Facebook and hearing all these things. I want you hear something, reach out. We're here. We'll give you the facts. And we will own our mistakes. I guarantee you that. We will look to not only own them, but improve on them. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. You talked about recruitment.
Yes, sir.
And is there a problem with recruiting people to EMS? And if there is there anything being done with university level, entrance levels, in order to make it more attainable by students coming out of high school or any other walk of life? Because I know for nursing, it's the criteria are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And yes.
So the answer is simple, is yes. We are challenged in recruiting, so I'm going to be transparent. It's not easy. Everybody in this province is asking for the same amount of staff and increasing numbers because our people are tired and fatigued and they're injured, right? So not only do we need people to replace, add new resources, we also need people to replace existing resources because we have injured people. So we're working with the schools, we're working with advanced education. All of that work's underway right now, but it's not easy. I'm in charge of the zone, but I also have a provincial responsibility. So I have to work with my colleagues throughout the province. I'll be honest, we're blessed in the Calgary zone. We're the easiest zone to recruit to. So we do get a fair amount of staff, but it's getting thin. So we're lucky in this zone. People want to come to this beautiful zone. It's attractive to people to work here in this zone, whether it's Calgary or our bedroom communities or the rural communities around it. So we're lucky that way, but we are challenged. Chris, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's fairly well encompassing. As I said, it takes upwards to 3 years for a paramedic to be fully trained. And that doesn't happen overnight either, right? So all of those factors come into place. But yes, we are working very, very tightly with the schools. I mean, a lot of their training also requires us to be participating with them to give them those sites so they can learn. And we're opening up our doors and we're creating those opportunities to try to continue to make sure that the recruitment levels are sustained going forward.
I have an in. I sit on the advisory, I'm the chair of SATE Advisory Council, so I kind of toot my own horn there. So,
yeah, they're trading pigs in the backside.
So we're doing everything we can, I'll be honest. We're even looking internationally to recruit. But as Chris said, this is an international problem. The challenges you saw up on the board there, that's internationally. We've not only been in contact with the paramedic chiefs of Canada, we've been in contact with Europe, Australia, all through Asia. They're experiencing the same challenges we are. It's not unique. Okay.
Other questions? Thanks for all those answers.
Thanks for
Well,
being here.
It's my staff. They're fantastic. Thank
I
you.
think all of us certainly agree with your comments about the value of our paramedics and the emergency medical
Thank you, Mayor.
services in our community. I also agree that we don't thank them nearly enough for even go and meet them and say hi or whatever the case might be. So, although I probably won't go hug them, I certainly only because nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So, thanks so much for all this, and you know it's important to understand how we got to this point and why all these why the group has been formed and why the 10-point plan is put in place. But more important is the response to the issues, and that being the 10-point plan, the long-term vision, the engagement that you're having. You know, some of us have been here for 5 years and have to say we haven't seen that. But we also haven't reached out either, so that's just on us as well. So it's nice, it's great to have that presentation and to know the mitigation. And it's kind of like when, and I'm just going to do a quick analogy, when people tell us our roads are bad, we know that. When we tell you issues and concerns we have, you know that. You work in it, you live it every day. So I appreciate that attention to it, and that that the province has brought that together in a great. AHS is a big machine, and it's nice to have AHS people right here in our room that we can speak to. I've heard you say that you'd like us to go to Chris through our CO.
Yes, please.
Our issues to him. So I was going to ask that. Some of us participated in a survey that went on
Yes.
not long ago, so that was another way. I'm sure there'll be more come out or updates or whatever. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the information. We could talk about this all night. And I know that there's lots of questions that always come from these, but also lots of relief and lots of appreciation for the work that's being done on the issue. And thank you so much for the work you do too. You had to work your way through the system, I'm sure, somewhere to get into your positions and your knowledge and experience.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Moore?
I move that council thank the AHS Emergency Medical Services delegation for attending the council meeting and accept the presentation as information.
Thank you for that. And once again, thanks so much. You're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of it. I'm sure it's not on your list tonight.
Oilers fan.
Yeah.
Not me.
No. I'll make a quick exit now. Thank you very much for that, Randy.
Yeah.
I always say, you go for Team Canada, you never have a problem.
Yeah,
there you go.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We appreciate it. Thank you for the time. The offer's there again. We will come out. We will reach out. We're more than happy. We will come out yearly to do a similar presentation. If you need data, though, ahead of that, you're hearing concerns, Chris through Ethan would be the preferred method, please.
Certainly.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Can't believe.
I'm going to go beat him up on the
Okay, so we,
The Oiler fan.
oh, I forgot the log is track again. I see. So we have the adoption of the May 10th, 2022 regular council meeting minutes on the, as the next agenda item. Yes?
just wanted to mention that Alexa Ross was not in attendance, and she's noted in the minutes as present.
What's that?
Alexa was not at the meeting, so she's noted as
Yep.
present, so
Okay. All right, noted. So we cut that one. Councillor Moore is going to accept as amended then.
Yes, I am. I move that council adopt the May 10th, 2022 regular council meeting minutes as amended.
Are there any other comments, questions? We'll call the vote then. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. We move on to item 6, bylaws and policies, insurance development proposal. Item 6.1. The bylaw 2022-06, amending the Shantz Village Area Structure Plan, third reading. So, Ethan, do you have anything you would like to add here?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to just add some clarifying comments, as obviously there's interest, public interest in this. So just a few things to remind the public as well as council of is that council is in this decision making a decision on the proposed commercial development. They're deciding on the land use itself and the right designation for that land. So the decision on the development itself and the things related thereto will be decided at the development permit application phase of the process. Another point is that this isn't a proposal to add new development or anything new. This is an existing lot that is part of an area structure plan, and that the proposal isn't, again, proposing to add anything new, but it's just proposing to redesignate a specific part. But it's an existing lot already with anticipated development. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. The other thing is the reason that this is being brought forward is one of the things about this is to bring this into, that would bring this more in line with the overarching higher level documents as well with this proposal. Now, whether the right zoning for this specific piece of land, that's at the sole discretion of council. Council always has the sole discretion in what the zoning on any piece of land in the town of Didsbury is. And that rests solely with council, and at any time, always at their discretion to any zoning that they set for a land or any changes to that zoning that they set for a piece of land. And then the last point I just wanted to make is that council, in considering the proposed changes to the land use bylaw as well as the area structure plan, is in consideration of the information that was provided and presented at the public hearing, and that their decision can only be based solely on that information. And that's why once the public hearing is closed, even though there's always new ideas or questions or new information that sometimes comes to mind that would be helpful, once the public hearing is closed, no additional information can be brought to consideration or sought out. So the discussion and the questions would be about the information that's been presented as part of the public hearing.
Okay, I'm going to have the motion first. Councillor Moore.
Why not?
Well, you've done them all so far, so you're on a roll.
I move that council grant third and final reading to bylaw 2022-06, amending the Shantz Village Area Structure Plan. And as a real estate agent and broker, I can assure you that a busy highway intersection with heavy highway exposure is much more suited to commercial and residential.
So thank you for the, well, actually, when someone makes a motion, they can speak to it first. So She just didn't take a breath between when she... But thank you for that. We have the motion, and I'll take comments or questions from anyone. And I advise council to heed Ethan's advice. I have the same things highlighted that we are talking about. The village area structure plan. Councillor McCoy?
I start with the question about process. I spoke with Municipal Affairs, and they now have advisors like planning and development advisors who are specialists in planning. And I asked the very question of, once the public hearing is closed, can I ask for more information? And they said yes. And they said that council should be asking for more information, that when the public hearing closes, that's the end of public information coming to us. It doesn't mean that if we learn new things, we can't use them in part of our decision.
And I would like to maybe raise that again. Municipal affairs coming up all the time. That I think council has to have a discussion about that, but I think that'll be another day. In the meantime, any information we have, use it in your vote. That we are here to vote on this area structure plan redesignation.
I'll request a recorded vote, please.
Certainly. Councillor McCoy?
It's funny how you don't even look like her. Anyway, go ahead.
And I wasn't looking at you this time. Thank you, Mayor Hunter. I had a problem with this, and I still have a bit of a problem with this whole thing, and that being that in 4 years on council plus whatever this term, we've never had an opportunity as a council to discuss what our vision of that area is. It's been under contract. Maybe we're limited in what we could discuss. It's back in contract again, and we may be limited again in what we can talk about. We never took the opportunity to look at it and see what our vision is for that property, nor did we take it and look at it. And so that's where I have a bit of a problem with this. I would hope that once this is done and once we get a chance to digest what's happened, that we do take the opportunity to get the council together and have a look and see what exactly it is we want for that whole area, rather than taking it by piecemeal or handed to us from somebody else.
I'm sorry, I should have called point of order earlier. We are talking about the redesignation of this zone, of this area structure plan. So that conversation can be had at another time when council would like to talk about the whole area of Shawns. Right now we're dealing with this item on the agenda. So can we please stick to this item on the agenda as our CEO has advised, and deal with our other issues outside of what the rest of Shawns is at another day. Councillor Baswick.
I hope I'm in order here. The question I have is, okay, with changing this through the chair, does this mean that since we're going to change it to residential effectively? And if so, does that mean that the people there can be pulled if someone wants to come in and build something industrial or commercial? That's my question, unless I didn't read this right.
Well, I think Ethan could clarify if you read that right or not and answer that question.
So I think I understand the question. So this proposal is just to clarify, to take a portion.
Ethan, can just put up that picture?
Yeah.
Luana, just that one lot that's got red, it's a rectangle. Just put that.
And that'll help. Carry on, Ethan. Thank you.
And maybe just, this will also help, this has been alluded to, but so in approximately 2016, there was an area structure plan proposal that came forward as part of a larger vision that set forth some principles for that overall area. in the 7 or the 6 years since, that has not panned out. It has not been fulfilled. So, and I know we spoke kind of at length about that, whether there's some kind of commitment or agreement. The reason there's not a commitment or an agreement is again, land use is always at the sole discretion of council, but also the vision that was set forth into 2016 was never realized. It never happened. And so as a result, there's someone with a new idea to adjust it basically a little bit, to do something there, because the existing vision wasn't panning out. It wasn't happening. And so that's something to also keep in mind when you think of someone that's had a previous vision. They had ideas, but nothing's ever come of that. Nothing in the 6 years. It never took shape and it never went forward. And so someone else has raised their hand and says, I have an idea for how to actually do something here. Hence the application to adjust slightly the zoning here, which is on this corner lot, to go from, instead of residential, to commercial. Yeah, there's a better image there. And so as part of that application, notice was advertised for a month straight in the newspaper, on the website, in our social media, letting everyone know about the proposed application to rezone that portion of land and inviting all comments on that. Comments were collected and made available to council. Anyone in the future that wanted to propose a different adjustment to the land use there, again, a similar process would follow with notification and a public hearing. So the other thing is here is this proposed adjustment to the development is in line with the planning principles of the municipal development plan and the area structure plan as well. So that's why these are brought as part of, to get them all in sync with each other.
So residential will continue down the rest of the blue. The rectangle in red is being asked to become commercial, not residential. In a nutshell, that's what that means.
Yes.
And thanks for your response too, Ethan. And that's what we're voting on. Councillor McCoy?
You can tell me if I'm not allowed to know this information, but I'd like to ask the questions publicly anyways. Some of them you've answered. Typically when somebody rezones a property, is it typical to talk to the neighbors about it through the chair? To our planner?
Ethan?
No, it's not necessarily typical. We post notice and we do more than what the Act requires, and our typical process is to do a full month. The Act requires a couple of weeks. We do a full month and we put it everywhere on social media, on the website, in the newspaper. Everybody has the ability to have to register a comment or not, and that tends to be our usual practice.
Would it be more common when it's rezoned that's when you should engage with the people across the road? So back in 2016, would that have been a process? If we're talking about people, and I'm just wondering, everybody's done their due diligence with administration. Yeah. It's been in the paper, all the plans have been there, the information's been there. So you don't have to answer that. You've answered that. It's not normal, and so it wouldn't be in any situation.
People are responsible for their information.
Councillor McCoy?
Do you want me to just rip through them?
Well, I'd like you to stick to the principles of...
I'm trying to.
So
I'll read them, and if you can say they're not part of it, then it's a public record that they're not part of it. Okay? My next question is about the traffic impact assessment.
Which is not relevant.
It is relevant.
It is into the, I'll call point of order that doesn't have to be answered because it's not relevant to the commercial redesignation.
Okay, so that doesn't matter. The housing across the street, those poor little residential houses across the street that are now gonna have semis driving into their yard to make the big turn into the thing.
Semis,
Have
again,
we talked to them? No.
You just
I'm
asked that
talking about
question.
town impact, sorry if that was inappropriate.
you just asked that question.
Well,
Ethan
No, it
answered
was a
it.
different question.
if I could, Mayor, I'll just, remember, this is on the proposed redesignation of land, not on the project itself, not on the commercial projects.
I understand that, but I guess my concern is that if we rezone it and then do the investigation and find out that it's gonna cost us $1 million, the town of Didsbury, for this additional access, all I'm asking for is that I know that now before we vote in favor of it and then get bit by we didn't know that that was something we'd have to do for Alberta Transportation. It's
Well-
essentially what my question is.
Well, at your
Well,
pleasure. I can speak.
If I could, the list of questions came, and all of these items were talked to at the last meeting, and they've been asked and answered, so that's my issue with a lot of them. They were asked and answered. And it's been deemed that the traffic impact assessment has no bearing on rezoning to this commercial development. So that's the track I would want to stay on. If it comes to a time when when Ethan, the next phases of this, the traffic impact assessment, will come to the council table, and that's when we'll discuss them. And that's the best answer, I believe. The asked and answered questions are on here. The residential one wasn't asked before, so that's a fair question to ask because, and Ethan answered it. So, Councillor Ingle, did you have a question in that?
No, I just wanted to address there's already trucks turning there. They're hauling goods into the existing businesses already, so.
But they're not turning to and then turning right.
It's not a face-to-face debate. I would really like to, if there's questions about this area structure plan that is relative to the area structure plan becoming commercial, that red little corner there, please ask them now. We need those questions if you have them on that area structure plan redesignation, the commercial. So if there aren't any other questions on that, you had a comment? Is that what you're looking at me funny too, like Councillor Windsor?
Oh, no, sorry. No, just an additional observation that I think would also help illuminate and make the point is there's other properties in their zone with various zones that will require all kinds of impacts what they're built on. Again, this isn't proposing to add any new development. This is just rezoning an existing piece, but this was all created, zoned, and planned for with an area structure plan to anticipate a lot of development in there. And that's why the questions about increased traffic or impact, those were all sorted at the time, but this was all subdivided and zoned previous with that anticipation. So that all those other properties that are currently zoned with the anticipation of being built upon, and each one of those will require all kinds of different impacts. But that was all approved at the time of that creation.
So are there more comments or questions on the redesignation of that lot? Because I'm ready to call the vote then. I'll call all in favor. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Council. That's, I think, 2 hours and 20 minutes, no, maybe even 3 hours that we spent, and that's fine. It was a good discussion all through and I hope everybody has their answers. So we have item 6.1.2. And again, the bylaw 22-07, amending the land use bylaw, the third reading. Did you want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion. Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council grant third and final reading to bylaw 2022-07 to amend the land use bylaw.
All right. So any questions relative again to the land use bylaw? Can please be asked now. Councillor McCoy?
I don't know what I'm allowed to ask or what I'm not allowed to ask, so
questions relating to the land use?
So I'm just going to request a recorded vote again, and I'll put my stuff out there to the world at a later time, or whatever I say is appropriate.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the land use bylaw third reading? Call the vote then. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we have the issue of the disposal of the municipal reserve. Councillor McCoy?
I have a question before you put it on there. I know it's for lot 7, but there's a little green line that runs across.
Can we have the motion first, please?
Okay, ask someone else then.
Well, we need the motion, so Councillor Moore.
I move that council approve for the disposal of lot 7 MR in Shots Village.
Is that what we want to say?
Not really.
Sorry, I think there's a typo there, that council approved the disposal of lot.
Okay, I take out the 4.
Thank you. Okay, questions or comments? Councillor McCoy, did you want to carry on with your comment or question?
So if you look at the MDP picture that you had them bring up earlier, Mayor, there is a picture with a little green strip on page 14. Well, you don't have to. I'm just saying that there's a little green strip that goes kind of across the middle of the property on the other side of the tracks. But if you go look at the other side of the tracks, there is now a public works department and a fire hall right against it. So I'm just curious if we should not hold off or include this in any kind of changes. One more, maybe? No. Is that 14? One more page. Page 14.
Would you mind repeating the last part of that? It was
Oh. No, I wasn't.
like to be held off?
Are you done with the green strip, Joyce?
Yeah. It's
I can speak to that.
Isn't that a municipal reserve? That's what it's listed as on the original chart.
So we need to be on page 14.
Yeah, we keep going the wrong page. That green strip right there.
So Craig will just explain what that green strip is. It is different than this. This is specifically the strip of municipal reserve that's on the property itself, but Craig will explain.
Yeah, so what you're seeing there, so if we just refer to the picture that's mostly purple, because it's really visible, that green strip that kind of goes up and off to the right. Yeah, so that's actually reserved for the stormwater pond outfall that's associated with the stormwater pond management facility for the Shantz subdivision.
Thanks for that. Other comments, Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. I guess I would like to know what disposal means. Does that mean we're giving it away? Does that mean we're selling it? Does that mean we're going to burn it? What does disposal mean?
Okay.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Windsor. What disposal means is that it removes the municipal reserve designation on it, so it would still be a strip that's owned by the town. And so then that regarding what happens with that, that's still an ongoing process that is part of the development permit process that will, and anything that we do propose to do with it will come back to council that once we have that sorted out with the developer. But this is just to remove the MR designation on it, and then we'll then have to sort out how we act, what we do actually with this little piece of town-owned land. So
we still have final say. It will all with council. So we'll bring back, once we have a set proposal for what to do about the land that we own itself.
that will come back, but this is just to remove the MR designation.
Thank you for your observation. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. So just for clarification, this isn't disposal at all. This is just reclassification. because we're not getting rid of it. We're not burning it up.
No.
We're just redesignating it, taking the MR off it.
Yes, in semantics terms, correct. Disposal is just the legal term for removing an MR designation. That's referred to as being a disposal. That's the legal term, but you're right. It's just removing the MR designation.
That is the term that's used in the Act.
So everybody put a reminder every 6 months to ask Ethan about that MR to see where we're at with it.
It's not
If
MR.
everybody can do that, or that disposed MR. So, just so we keep it at the front of our thoughts.
Oh, it'll come much sooner than that, but obviously there's only so much conversation on that we can have until we found out how these other decisions went.
So we have a motion for the disposal of Lot 7 MR in Shantz Village. Any other questions or comments? Call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, everyone. We can move on to what's even more exciting than rezoning is the passing of our tax rate bylaw that will eventually affect this property number. So we have, I'm going to get to the motion. We'll have the motion. And unless there are comments, I guess I'd like comments or questions if we're happy with that tax rate for non-resident or non-residential and residential, and or if someone's ready to make the motion with the rates as presented. Councillor Vaswick would like to make that.
I move the council grant first reading to bylaw 2022-09. That's 44.
Page 38.
We're on the tax rate bylaw, page 38.
We know you want to watch.
I thought you were talking, I heard you talking about the tax rate, which is on 38, you're right. Smart enough. All right, here we go. Move the council grant third and final reading to tax rate bylaw 2022-08, a bylaw to establish the rates and penalties for the 2022 taxation year.
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments? Councillor Windsor?
Mayor Hunter, does the motion need to say as presented or included in the RFD or something to indicate that it makes reference to the one we're looking at here?
It was titled that way, so I guess, Ethan, it's titled that way, so I think it follows the motion 2022-08. Those numbers can't be changed since they're in the agenda package. I believe I'm correct in that statement. But
Yes, but if you add the word as presented, then if that helps everyone feel better about it, that's not wrong to say. In fact, that's probably better.
But I have to accept that friendly thing, don't I? Which
actually, no.
In order to keep civility in the group, I will accept that.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Because this is the end of a 10-year process that we've gone through.
Feels like, but it was 3 months. Councillor Windsor.
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. On page 43 of the agenda, where it talks about Schedule B and the penalties on unpaid taxes, is there a reason we wait until September? Taxes are due the end of June, and we wait 2 months before we levy. I would like a credit card that does that for me.
So direction was, thank you for the question, and this is a good opportunity to clarify that. So taxes aren't due at the end of June, they're due, according to this bylaw, at the end of August. And so That was a direction previously that council put back that due date as a way to give people, often some towns do set them at the end of, earlier in the year, especially those towns that are really relying on those cash flow issues. We don't have those same issues. And so when we discussed it in previous years, council was comfortable with giving people a bit more time and put that date back. And we, when we were reviewing it, we again reviewed this and had this internal discussion, and we still as administration felt comfortable with that date and not feeling like that would hinder our.
All right, any other questions? Moment we've all been waiting for, I'll call the vote on the 2022 tax rate. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We have a new bylaw here.
Council last week started, so I think you should finish the motion.
Is there another one?
No, for recreation law.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, that's fine. Bylaw 2022-09, recreation rates. Go ahead, Councillor Patrick.
Since you started it.
I am on page
Two motions there, though.
Page 44.
Yes. Please read the first motion.
Sure. I move that council grant first reading to bylaw 2022-09, a bylaw to establish recreational rates for 2022 and.
You want to end it there? You can do the next one.
One at a time.
You want to do them one at a time? Okay.
Any
Questions or comments on this first reading of these rates? Call the vote. All in favor? That's carried.
And
Moving on. I move the council refer bylaw 2022-09 recreation rates to the Strategic Planning Committee for a review and recommendation.
Any other? Well, there weren't any to begin with. So any comments on this motion? So this SPC will have some work to do, I guess. All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That's carried.
we have item 7.
Business, and 7.1 is Mount View Colts renovation request. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council approve the renovation of the Colts dressing room at the Disburg Bowler Complex and that all costs associated with this renovation be at the expense of the Mountain View Colts Hockey Club. Yes.
Questions? Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. I don't think I have enough information here to do this at all. It looks to me like we got a drawing on a draft paper or not sure exactly, maybe a lined napkin. Is this, we have estimated figures. I have no idea where this is in the building, what wall we're supposed to be taking out, where we're supposed to be adding. To me, this is nowhere near enough information for me to make an educated decision on this. And so I think that this needs to go back to administration to bring more information for us with some reasonably accurate drawings, maybe not engineered drawings, but some drawings to give us an idea where this is in the building, as well as maybe some estimates as to what this is going to cost. I think that whether the Colts are paying for it or whether the town's paying for it, it's a town facility, and we kind of need to know exactly what is planned here, in my opinion.
Is there a question you'd like answered in that?
Is that a motion that you want to act?
Well, I would prefer that, but you already made the motion, so.
There's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, Nicole is, she could address your concern. The
Well, on that, yeah, my first question would be, we need to clearly identify what the information we need and to what quality you would like that information. And but I do think that would have to be a motion that I think Councillor Windsor would need to make.
Which
Well, maybe my question would be to Councillor Williams, is whether or not we would consider a different motion rather than approving this and look for drawing where this is in the building, what exactly the dimensions are, what impact it's going to have on other future users. I think there's a whole bunch of questions that I would like answered.
You're addressing them, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. If you're proposing an amendment, I'm going to turn it down. I think this is a great addition. I know exactly where it is in the arena, and if the club is going to pay for all the renovations by a qualified contractor, I'm in favor of this. And I'm going to say no to your friendly amendment. Sorry.
Okay. Councillor McCoy?
Yeah, I do like that, that it's bringing in Castle Building and the professional renovator. Just one quick question. Are they taking more space than they currently have, or they're just renovating their current space?
So it is in a little bit of an addition. So the dressing room that they have right now, sharing a wall with it, is the lower men's washroom in the curling rink. And that men's washroom has a front section which houses the sinks and the toilets and the urinals. And then there's a back portion that has a shower area and right now has lockers and benches for changing. It's like a change room kind of essentially. It's that portion, that's that back half of the washroom that they're looking to have access to, update the showers, to add more shower stalls to it, and then be able to utilize it. Through they would open the wall between the two spaces so that they can access it right from the dressing room rather than going out into the hallway to use and go around in towels sometimes is how they're accessing these spaces.
And I can't remember where I read it in this when I was reading it, but there was something about locking it so other users couldn't use it. And is that, like, now do they own that space?
No, so I've spent quite a bit of time working with the Colts, but also the Curling Club, because they are the other main users of that facility. And so the agreement is that that shower area only would be accessible for curling to use when they need it for their men's nights and for bonspiels and things like that. And the Colts would have it. But outside of that, because then we're looking at not regular users, but more one-off rentals, it would remain locked so that they'd still have access to the washroom area, but there would be no need for a shower or a changing room.
Okay, thank you. That answers all my questions.
So I think you clarified something for me through your question. They're already using that space. They're really just wanting to open up a door, put another door in that would stop access if they're using it that particular night. So I think I agree with Councillor Williams. I think that is a good renovation. It's an added value to our existing building.
I just wanted to address that they aren't already using that. They're using the hogline room. They're not using that room. They're using other showers in the hallway right now. So that is just a clarification. They're not using that. So it's a new use for them.
Right. So if they're not using it, who is using it?
So currently the back portion of that washroom space is only accessed by the Curling Club on men's night, so once a week during curling season, or for bonspiels, which we haven't had for a couple of years, but would be maybe 4 or 5 times throughout the year. It's a changing area with one shower stall. The shower stall never gets used. The changing area does.
Councillor Baswick?
I forgot my question. No, I guess the idea of securing that one area makes sense to me because the hockey team probably uses those lockers for personal items and uniforms when they're not playing. So it would make sense to isolate that area from the general public, in my opinion.
They're not storing the uniforms in there. But that's okay. It is going to be secured. That's a good point. They do have another locker. And I'm interested in the precedent being set, and I'm all for red tape reduction, and this is something that might accommodate this, and P2s and P3s, and this looks to me like a P2 or P3, or at least P2 at this point. But I have two questions. One would be what other situations do we have where a user group would go in and renovate a facility? And are there any at this point that we have precedent setting, or how to answer those if the next group wants to do the same thing?
Another group wants to do something like that?
For sure. So in terms of precedence setting, or I guess in terms of other requests of this manner, we've never had one for any of our indoor facilities, but we have in our park spaces. So the Valarosa playground, as well as the tot lot that was put in at Kinsman were both fundraised, paid for, and put into place by volunteer organizations within the community. And upon installation, they turned over ownership to the town. So then we're responsible for the insurance and for the maintenance and ongoing costs associated with it. So those are examples, but indoor-wise, we've never really had this. So this would be the first time that we've had it. I would, thinking about where we might get additional requests from other user groups, right now I couldn't say that I would expect any, just because when we're talking about the minor hockey or figure skating, they don't have dedicated space. They're just not, their team isn't large enough, whereas the Colts and then in our off-season, both of our lacrosse clubs are using this space. It makes sense for them to have access to this. However, I would think that a proper agreement between the town and the Colts ahead of this renovation beginning would help protect us in terms of what our expectations are, what the inspection levels were, so just to make sure that the job was being done right. It may be where we would consider a policy to be put into place for future requests, and it wouldn't obviously be done in time if council were to approve this renovation, but in consideration that future requests might come, at least then there would be proper policy, and that we weren't receiving just a letter of request from a community group, that we would have different expectations. And there is, already we have, a few years ago, council approved the community partnership policy, which sort of is, so that policy, the intent of that is that if a group are wanting to raise funds for a splash park or for a new playground or for something new in the community, that they would follow the process in the policy so that it can get onto council's docket, so then council can plan for it if there's costs associated for the town in a budget that way. That might be where we could relook at that policy and add just something in terms of requests like this. This is the first that we've received of this kind, so we don't have a policy in place, but if you were to approve it tonight or in the future, then we probably should put something in place. That's how policy comes. Sometimes when you don't think that you need something because it never happened before, and now you're faced with it.
And I'm just going to finish, and you addressed the letter that we would have with the groups, and it's when you open walls or if there's something's damaged, and everybody's protected that way, and insurance, that's what administration looks after. But I like the idea of the policy, and we are a municipality here. We're protecting our facilities as our administrative team, and that's the way we do it, is by having the right paperwork in place. So I'd like a subsequent motion maybe to explore how that could fit in the community participation policy, and if someone would be willing to make that. Go ahead, Councillor McCoy.
I would be willing to make that motion. Actually, I think it should probably go to policy and governance again. I have a quick question just for clarity. I'm assuming that their comment about the Maverick Stingers lacrosse is they're not going to reno while they're in their season, but next year this won't impact them having it done, right?
No, so their intent is that from their dressing room, the opening in the wall wouldn't have, that's the last thing that they would do.
Gotcha.
They do all the stuff on the side that doesn't impact any users currently and would open the wall last once the lacrosse is finished. But this will be a benefit for those clubs as well going into the future because they're accessing shower sick base the same way that the Colts currently are too.
Just clarifying that that was the situation.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions or comments? Councillor Williams has a motion he made. I will call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Would you like to make that motion, Councillor McCoy, to explore the community participation policy? Is that what it is, Nicole?
Yeah, it's the community participation policy. Community partnership policy.
Community partnership, yeah.
Community partnership policy
Yes.
that we send.
Explore partnerships with user groups.
Oh, okay.
And the proper processes and wording in that policy.
You got that then?
It's for both parties as well, so, the Colts can be protected as much as the town. When they start hanging down walls, so.
I think would we like that to go to the policy and governance first or come back to council and send it to the policy? We can do it all in one motion tonight to send it there.
Yeah, you could send it here.
Okay. So we can send it to policy and governance tonight with that motion.
Okay, so just add that in.
Sure.
Okay. But okay, poor Bruce.
Sorry, so how about explore the community partnership policy to include groups, groups and volunteers wanting to contribute to town facilities.
Renovations or additions
To
town facilities. Sure. And send it to this policy and governance committee. All right.
Any other questions or comments? I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Sorry, I just had a thought, smile. Okay, and then
Thanks to the Colts for their interest in contributing to the facility. The Economic Development Visioning Follow-Up Session is item 7.2.
you want to make that too? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council set June 8th, 2022 from 6 until to 8:30 p.m. for an economic development vision and follow-up session.
Well, there you go. Make a decision and
Make the motion. Thank you for that. Any comments? Maybe
we should hear, was there a consensus? Is everybody available on the 8th? Was that in the survey or do we know about the survey?
Yeah, the survey, the last update I got was that only 2 had taken the survey, so
I did. I did.
those are our 2.
2.5. Maybe I forgot to submit.
Councilman,
you have a question, then I'll ask everybody if June 8th is good.
Well, I guess the question, how do I put this into a question? It may be, I wonder if it's possible, that's how we do this question. I wonder if it's possible that people didn't choose any of them and submitted them as their choice.
Is that how, if someone had put no for something, would you still have gotten that?
I didn't check any of the boxes.
And submitted it.
There was no option.
Right.
So that makes sense.
Oh, maybe.
None of the above?
None of this. Yeah.
Oh, well, there will be next time.
Yeah, we'll re-look at our tool.
Yeah. June 8th is a Wednesday. Are you good with that, Councillor Beswick?
Either one's fine, 8's good.
8th or 15th? Councillor Williams?
You make a motion, so.
You just, only June 8th?
Well, June 15th I can do too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Windsor?
Yeah, it doesn't matter, yeah, just me when I did. Other than the second.
Yeah.
15th would be the preference.
Councillor?
She's not available on the 15th, I can make it 8.
Can you make the 8th, though?
Yes, I can.
Well, I know. Councillor Moore?
I can do the 15th. I don't plan on being back there.
Okay, who is available on the 15th? I think everybody said they were except Councillor McCoy. Isn't? And you're not.
And I'm okay with everybody else then.
I'll try and do whatever works.
Okay.
Whatever.
Oh, you guys make it so hard. We have 2 nights, one of each, which one councillor won't be there. So, Councillor Moore has offered that. And I'll take the offer if you don't really mind.
I don't mind at all.
And they won't be here June 8th, but you might be back. But we could go with the 15th. So we'd have to have a friendly amendment for the 15th. Oh, sorry, the 8th. That's what I meant. Councillor McCoy can't be here on the 8th.
I can try to make it back.
Yeah. No, and
That's all forward.
I think in fairness, because we are, I think really what would be preferred then is if our Economic Development Department was ready for this, then the package can be distributed early. The earlier the better. And then Councillor Moore could weigh in on some information at the time. Did you have anything to say to this, Ethan? Could I ask? We ask our administrative team to sit through here and never ask, some get to speak, some don't. So I'm going to ask if it's okay if Alexa speaks, if there's anything she'd like to add to this.
Sure. Anything to add?
No, I'm quite flexible, whatever you wish when you want to do that. The preference was to have it before the 20th, when DDAC is have their meeting, and it's the last one before the summer break. So it would be nice to have it before the 20th, though. Anything that works for you, that's fine with me.
Okay, so the 8th, we ask that the information be available maybe on the 5th, if that can be done. So that, well, the 6th, whatever the Monday is, and then Councillor Moore. She could at least weigh in on some thoughts. 8th of June is when the meeting's going to be.
Okay, so what are you talking about?
Well, Councillor Moore might not be here, so if the information package could be prepared.
Sure, and I can maybe zoom in if I'm not back, so.
Sure, okay.
I'm fine.
All right, thanks for that, everybody. So we have a motion for June 8th. I'll call the vote. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we have temporary patio dining. And I'd like Ethan to speak to that because I think there's been some comments and feedback, and it looks like this might be a lifelong investment in patio dining, which is great, but I think with the comments and concerns, the discussion is worthy here.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so we're bringing this because we've received both, council's been hearing feedback, we've been hearing feedback, and people do have some questions about some of the specific ways that some have tried to incorporate their patio. And so we're bringing this back for just some added clarification from council to assist us in this. Ultimately, so as noted in the RFD, this is just a temporary allowance that it was extended by council. Ultimately, the best place to address this as a permanent framework is in the land use bylaw, which when we do that update, this is part of one of the things we'd like to do better and enhance better. So in the meantime, with our temporary allowance, which again, for the most part, has worked really well, and we've thought it's really enhanced the vitality and the vibrancy of our downtown, especially in the summer. But we do think it would help if there was just some clarification on a few things, specifically with regards to the parking lot, pedestrian access, as well as parking utilization. Some of them have to use a little parking utilization, but maybe some limits on that would be helpful as well. We've been trying to be helpful with all of our restaurants to make this work, especially back during the COVID lockdowns. We really kind of stretched some stuff because that was the only way they were able to serve people. But obviously now that they have other options, probably a few clarifications would be helpful.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I noticed that in front of the, what do you call it, the beer store, they took 3 stalls, and the restaurant took 2. Interesting enough, the restaurant that took 2 stalls was one of the major complainants that stalled the development of that corner building, and because of lack of parking. And now he's taking up 2 parking stalls for an outdoor thing. Now, I don't have a problem with outdoor dining. I think it's a great idea. But it's bothersome to me that the person that complained about someone across the street with a parking issue is now taking up parking at places. And so whether I go along with this or not, I don't know. I guess my inner self wants me to be nasty, but yet I want to be reasonable as well, you know. While I like the dining, I don't like the idea of someone coming forward and get approval from the appeal committee or whoever they were to change that affected our development. Meanwhile, doing it is, what does it say? It's okay for me, but not for thee type thing. I don't like that. So that's my rant.
Well, I'll let you struggle with that while everybody else talks, and you can decide how you're going to vote. Councillor McCoy. Thank you.
I think the patios do add some great vibrancy to the downtown. I agree that they are taking up parking spots. When you look at it, there's actually 3 patios downtown. There's the one that you referenced, and there's the one on 19th, and then there's the beer store. I can't remember what it's called, but anyways, that one to me has taken more than their fair share of patio. And so it brings to light that I think if we're going to be permanent about this, we need a policy that they can follow. Because right now we haven't told them how far they can go in, and like even the parking lot, the place that you referenced, when you draw lines out straight from your building, but the parking is like this, you're actually killing off 2 additional spots, kind of on either side, depending on where you cut. That's my own comment. But I think the patios are wonderful.
Okay, Councillor Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Moore.
I think one of the other things that we need to address, and this is why it needs to go to committee, is safety. We're allowing patios that are protecting people from 3,000-pound vehicles via rope. And it's just not going to stop a traveling car from running over. So it's something I think that if we're doing a policy, we need to incorporate some safety measures. Or just another rope.
Although Vintage has built theirs out square, and so it would be difficult to maybe put it on a slant. I think that the point is well taken, that the parking spots are like that, and if the patios were slanted, they would not impact as much. I would like to see them continue. Perhaps, I think there are those cement barriers that you could put at the end just to make sure that somebody couldn't just sort of coast into that area. If it already has something like like Vintage does, I think probably that's okay, but just a rope is maybe not enough. And perhaps the size of the building should limit the amount of space they take, like it shouldn't be more than their building is, and then maybe slant. But I would hate to see it not happen. The one that I would never want to see anybody do anything in the way of retribution. I think that's totally inappropriate. As a matter of fact, that particular spot, the restaurant that you're talking about, is building patio space in the back, and there will be nothing on the street when that's finished. And so I don't want to hear about somebody getting even or something like that. So, but I think perhaps the slanted might help, but I wouldn't want to see Vintage have to change their configuration because it's built for a long time now.
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. I have a couple of questions. First of all, I would like to know what the conditions are right now associated with the permits for these things. Is there any condition associated with it? And secondly, I would like to hear what the planning department has for ideas.
Those are questions you can answer.
Yeah, so we could certainly bring back some planning analysis if council decided to give that direction on it. Again, it's probably gonna be a lot of stuff that's probably better sorted out in a proper policy framework within the land use bylaw. With regards to the current conditions, they're related to conforming to the site plan that was submitted. There's not a lot. I'd have to actually pull them up and look at them. But again, these were done very overnight. These were done during a time of unique distress that we were responding to very quickly, and good planning doesn't happen very quickly. So this was something that we did to serve and help people that were struggling and under duress make a go of it. And so as a result, it is lacking some good, well thought out planning frameworks, but that's what made it happen. And then that extension was given, but certainly it can be conditioned upon anything. I would certainly recommend probably that it not be extended again until we have some better framework put in place. But at least for this current period that it's been extended for, that you come up, that you give a few principles, like perhaps you put a limit on how many parking spaces they can use, because some of them can't help but use some, and whether it's 2 or 3 or something, that at least there's an amount that you can say, okay, no more than this, and then as well as something about the access being protected, which there's a few that have made a go of it, but there's some that can't help but overlap a bit, and we're working with them we're trying to be as workable and helpful on this as possible, but obviously
we're discussing it.
There's pros and cons to it. So,
Ethan, Craig had a comment if you differ.
If I might just add one more thing for you guys to consider. So when we do the street sweeping, these patios create a challenge with us being able to get up and be consistent. So we leave gaps, and these have kind of been somewhat challenging in function. So we've deployed personnel to go out there and hand broom areas where we couldn't get the sweeper to. That is intensive and takes us from our other duties that we would like to be fully engaged in. So I just food for thought while you're pondering these.
Do you have a follow-up question? Or
I've got some comments to add to the thing.
But your conversation with Ethan? We'll finish then and then Councilor.
Okay, thank you. Like, you want some conditions, and so some of the conditions that I would suggest is that they can't impact any more than 3 parking stalls, no matter what topography they use or trapezoid or whatever. They can't impact more than 3 parking stalls. They can't be allowed to block pedestrian access to the sidewalk. They can't block off a sidewalk. The one over at I can't think of the name of this place, was blocking the sidewalk, and it said you can't enter unless you're, say, 18 years or older. And so like they could just block the sidewalk right off. So that's another one, they can't block sidewalks. The last one I would say is that if their barriers are portable, they should come down when the store is closed. There's no need for them to have that open. If they're closed on a Saturday, why are they blocking off those parking stalls? And I also think that there should be a provision for special events, that they could get an extension or a special permission to run during a special event, to maybe expand it during the special event, or something of that nature to invigorate the downtown.
Okay, so recommendations, I think, would have to be that, first of all, are we sending it back to administration? So to make consideration for council's comments, or we send it to policy and governance to, because it will be part of the land use bylaw, so we could send it there. But I think that motion will need to come out after this to know, because everybody has thoughts, so do we want administration or the policy and governance to consider all those? And Councillor Williams has a comment, and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I love the idea of the patio, especially during the pandemic. A lot of these businesses put so much money into developing these patios, and I would hate to see them disappear. I think they're a great addition. But that being said, thank you to Craig for bringing up that excellent point. If the business wants to have this patio, I think they should be able to sweep it off and take care of the sweeping of it, so we don't have to send personnel out there to sweep it, because that is taken away from your duty. And businesses shouldn't be allowed to take out more than they ask for, unless on a special occasion.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
So I think we might be overthinking. If, according to Councillor Moore, we have one of these existing 3 moving to the back alley and removing themselves from the street, we're only dealing with 2 at this point in the entire town. And if some rules and regulations are set up, the others would have to follow that. But there's really only 2. There's 4 now?
Well, Jack Up has one, and Cowtown has one, and
Are they not in their own parking lot, or are they on the street? It's in their own parking lot.
It's not their own, not
Well, we own them all? Oh, so they're not impacting town parking?
You're right, yeah.
Okay. That's private property. Yeah, I mean, we only have, we're ultimately, if the other one moves, we're only looking at 2 at this point anyway, so it's not a huge encroachment on anything. But I agree, it is helping in summer with the vibrancy, and maybe it is something that during the off-season, maybe it's more seasonal, because I don't know, we're pretty hardy in winter, but sitting on patios at minus 35 may not be our ultimate goal. But I think we need to just come back with some advice and move on from this one.
Well, I think our next meeting is in 3 weeks, so I think administration's looking for a little bit of direction here. I think everybody agrees that the patios are great. I think everybody, what I've heard is that encroachment on too many parking stalls is detrimental, when we also know the feedback from downtown parking and what's going on. So there's some suggestions here, and maybe I'll summarize them 2 spots. Safety's an issue, and angled. I like the angled because it really, and that'd be add a unique twist to the patio as well. So those are just 3 thoughts. Anybody can add, but I think we really just need to, because it is going to become, we want more and more to happen too, so just even to have some parameters and then start working on the land use bylaw. Council?
Thank you, Mayor. I think we're perhaps spinning our wheels right now because the decision was leaning towards taking this to committee and then bringing it back to council for discussion. So forgive me, we're wasting a bit of time here.
I know, but we don't meet for 3 weeks. I think administration would like a little bit of direction right now. If they could maybe go and chat with a couple of the places taking up 4 or 5, if council would like that to happen. So would we set the direction that council ask administration to limit to 2, maximum 3? Have discussions with the proprietors and work out something that's satisfactory, 2 to 3 can fit in there, and really,
Collaboration, I think,
yeah,
is a really important thing.
absolutely.
That we work with them.
So that,
Okay, a motion that administration works with the proprietors of the patios to find a happy solution, or not a happy one, happy medium I was going to say, but a reasonable solution to minimize infringement of parking in our downtown core.
I like that. Then I make that.
Okay.
So is that, sorry, because that's not necessarily giving specific.
2 to 3.
Or,
2 is what I'm hearing.
But are we going to make someone that's got one a little bit bigger tear it down?
You're going to work with them, right?
That's, you know, we don't
I'd
know
like to
it.
hear from them,
Well-
and have it come back that way with theirs and ours.
it would, well, because we have been working with them. My only concern is it just, I don't know if what we would do would be satisfactory to, because again, it's not giving us kind of clear parameters. Maybe might I recommend at this point is maybe barring, if council's not clear, decide on exactly what to put as added framework. If they don't put anything right now, and maybe we could invite to the next council meeting representatives of these specific businesses to come and,
Or
just an idea, but
well, I would rather see our planning department maybe get the feedback and bring it back rather than, because the engagement should take place with the administrative team and the proprietors. All I'm concerned about is you got 3 weeks then to have some discussions, and maybe people just want to have the discussion and minimize their parking space, or we just live with it until we have something in place. If council can do that, then we'll have administration, the motion will be to have administration engage, find some solutions, feedback from the proprietors, and bring it back to council at June 14th. If everybody can.
That I just need.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Moore. Deputy Mayor?
So our existing one is in effect until December. Why is it June 14th or whatever, July 4th? Why do we need it back that quick?
Well, they only having patios in place, there are no parameters at all as to what the patio should look like.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is we're asking for this now to be done in 3 weeks.
No, we're asking for information to come back.
Yeah.
So is that enough time, you think?
oh yeah, and my understanding, I guess to address the question, my understanding is that you want us to have some preliminary discussions with the affected businesses, bring some of that input back to help council decide if they want to add any added restrictions to the approval, is how I'm understanding.
Yeah.
That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah, and we can do that. We can have that engagement before the next meeting.
Okay. Is that up there?
Can you do it?
Do you have a type?
Oh, I do on this right.
Computer.
I've got to.
Okay.
So I have administration engage with business establishments to find a reasonable solution to minimize the infringement of parking stalls and sidewalk access for temporary patio and bring back the comments to council.
Sure. All right. Call the vote on that. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we have energy invites, and I'm just going to speak briefly to this because I've listened to some of our councillors. And Councillor, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Windsor seem to be, they have a lot of, they talk a lot about carbon capture that I've listened to, and I'm going to suggest that, I'll certainly take other names, but council will consider sending these two councillors so that the reports come back and people, I'd like to go for an information item, but I don't expect to be paid, but I, if the council would agree that we have two kind of resident experts who understand the process that we bring back to the report. Is there anyone else who would like to put their name in for that?
I wouldn't expect to be paid, but if I'm available, then I'd like to go too. That's my area.
Okay, but so we can appoint two to go that would put in for remuneration and time, and anybody else that wants to go just wouldn't put in for the time. How's that?
Sounds good.
Is everybody okay with that? Can somebody make that motion to send Deputy Mayor and Councillor Windsor as our representatives that can submit expense claims? You don't have to put those words. Councillor McCoy, you just put your hand up to make that motion.
I was just going to say that the council approve and assign Councillor Windsor and Councillor Ango, or sorry, Deputy Mayor, no, Councillor. I'm mad. Deputy Mayor, I know. To attend the Enhanced Energy Summer Open House and, do we need to say, and submit expenses?
No, there must be a question.
I think further to that, I'd like to see carpooling and that anybody be invited to participate on their own time if they would like to. Is that a friendly amendment, okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, I'll call the vote then. All in favor? That's carried. Yeah, I know. You use your truck. That's fine. Okay, we have item 8.1, CEO report. Oh, we have item 7.5. The Minister of Municipal Affairs Code of Conduct engagement. What I would just like for a motion with this, everybody to, I know you can review it tonight, but what we're asking is that the minister's asked information from council as a voice to submit information. So if you could, Luana's going to create a document that you can just fill out and submit back to her. I think they're just yes and no answers. Luana will compile them and then her and I will send out this summary to council because June 14th is our meeting and we're going to submit it prior to June 14th. It's not really hard. We'll just make sure that we submit it prior to June 14th, and if anybody disagrees with the summary, which they likely won't, it's yes and no, and we'll just go by majority when we summarize it. So we're just asking council to submit responses to the Minister of Municipal Affairs engagement on the Code of Conduct to Luana by June 3rd.
Is that a motion?
Yeah. You want to make that motion? Councillor Windsor is making that motion. Okay. Any questions or comments right now? Call the vote. All in favor? Oh, I thought you were saying, oh, I don't want to vote for that. She hit her funny bone. That's carried. Okay. Now we have item 8, the CAO report. Are there verbal updates, Ethan, that you'd like to add?
Yes, I have a couple of verbals.
So go ahead.
Thank you. First, I just want to just speak briefly about there has been some buzz in the community, and we've had some feedback, and I know council has heard some about the new erected cell tower in the town. I did want to just go over just some basic process as well as provide some information for where people
can find information about it as well as share their concerns with the government. So all telecommunications in the country are governed solely at the discretion of the federal government through the federal telecommunications legislation that governs that. So it actually, and built into that legislation is it supersedes and overrides all zoning bylaws and municipal statutes. And so as a result, we don't have any jurisdiction over the placing of a tower. We do have an involvement of, they have a process called concurrence where they seek our input, and there is a process where those proposing to have a cell tower go through a local process where they put out notification, they collect information from the public. We help facilitate that process, and then we provide an opinion on the proposed cell tower to the federal government, but the federal government has sole jurisdiction, no matter what that input is, on deciding where and where to place these. With regards to matters of concerns, I know there have been concerns raised about the new 5G technology. So there's a whole bunch of information on the website canada.ca. It's a federal government website. They have all kinds of information about 5G and about what Health Canada says about that. So I won't get into that because that's their role to play, because they govern the safety of these things. So I will refer people there. You go to canada.ca, you type in 5G cell towers, and you'll find all kinds of information. On that information is also a link you can click on to report any concerns to them about that you're having about that, and they have a vehicle there on that website for the public to let them know if you have concerns about any of the towers or things like that. So with regards to those kinds of things, that's outside the purview of the municipality, and so I just wanted to speak to that, because often sometimes people think that the town can put a stop to them or is involved in saying whether they can be there or not. So just wanted to speak to that. Any questions about that? Okay. And then the second verbal is just a brief economic development. We'll just have Alexa speak briefly to the economic development newsletter.
Sorry, Ethan, one comment. You're going to put all that information on the website?
Yes, sorry. The last point is we're going to link on our website tomorrow the page that has the information about the 5G, the cell towers, as well as where to lodge your complaint to them. So we're going to put that all on the website. Just because there's been enough of an interest in the community that we want to help people find that info for how to do that.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. I just wanted to make Council aware that we just prepared a newsletter, and that's the first one of its kind for economic development. It's a summary of what we've done in the past 5 months, and it provides a little bit of DDAC information, what they have been working on. It provides business tools, a reminder that we're here to assist in economic development, and also, as well as tools that the Chamber provides, and that we are really that we are working together with the Chamber as well. We have some project highlights that will also be included in the newsletter, and there's a little bit of planning and development as well. So after our council meeting, I will forward this newsletter to all of council, and for you to see first ones to see. And the second part is that we actually have a network meeting on June 9th, which is in collaboration with the Chamber and DDAC. And this network meeting for all of businesses, not just for the Chamber members, it's for all businesses here in Didsbury. This will be held June 9th, starting at 6 p.m. at the International Grill. And appetizers will be provided. We have two sponsors. One is the International Grill. The other one is Vintage Coffee Bar. They helped out with some printing and such. The Chamber is helping out with the registration. Registration will be $15 before the event. Registration at the door will be $20, and that includes as well the appetizers. So that's pretty much it.
So council good with that?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Oh. No, yeah, yes. No, I'm hoping that that as many of you as possible can attend that event, and that was actually one of the purpose that I'm saying that here as well as DDAC and the chamber directors. So we're hoping that as many will attend. Of course, more businesses, so they can ask questions. They can ask questions to the economic development officer and what we do in our projects, what we're doing, and moving forward in economic development. So we're quite excited about that, and hopefully we have a lot of businesses showing up to the event.
Great idea. Other comments, questions?
It's exciting. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thursday, it's the day after June 8th when we're meeting too. So. Anything else, Ethan, for verbal?
No, that's it.
I thought you had a Cape thing.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we were requested to just bring back some information on the fees with regards to Cape. So just to briefly kind of touch on that. So the fees from Cape went up from 60 cents per capita to 70 cents. And then I'll have Alexa just speak to the part about their notification to the town.
Hello again. So, Cape actually sent us an invoice, and what was said, as Ethan already mentioned, it's 10 cents increase per capita. And they actually mentioned that this was put in place in 2021 at the AGM. There was a motion passed that this is 10 cents over the course of the next 3 years. So they're going to increase the rates for Cape. So that's approximately for us like $500. They mentioned that they announced it after the last AGM in a newsletter, but unfortunately we must have been missed because we did not receive an announcement on that one or a notification on that. But as they mentioned, they're looking for that motion that was done, and apparently that's what they put in place last year or the beginning of last year, and they did apparently mention that at the AGM, at the last AGM, and also put this forward in their summary of that AGM. And as I said, I looked at it and I couldn't find anything, so I requested that this will be reviewed, and also in light of transparency, I would like to see that also, that our council would like to see the motion, and also when this was dated and what was actually put in place.
I'd like to see the minutes of their AGMs and their meetings and what we just want to see. So I don't know if I should see that as well. And I'm just gonna, PRL, we might not like your answer, PRL, but we always get the question asked to council whether or not we agree with their increases. So that's where this information kind of fell with me, that, and I got it from another mayor that their invoice went up, so that's why I pursued the question, just to see if I was getting Not that another girl will lie to me, but she doesn't get the invoice in the mail. But thanks for that answer. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on the CAO report?
Are you finished?
Do you have a question? Go ahead.
I have a comment, thank you. A comment and a question, or something. I would like to commend the administration for that first quarter report. I was amazed by the notes and explained everything. It was very nice, and I hope that will be the benchmark that we see for quarterly reports going forward, because it was exceptional, in my opinion. The other thing is with regard to the 2022 operating budget meetings cost. Because we're having a policy and governance meeting tomorrow, I wonder if we could have the split of those numbers for each of those sectors for the council time, staff time, and food and other supplies and advertising at the meeting tomorrow.
Say again, she asked.
Okay, so the split on the meeting costs, which was in 2022 was $20,300. And just for our meeting tomorrow, if we could have what that split out to for each of those sectors.
Okay. You have them now, is that what you said?
Well, I have them to create that number.
Okay.
I have to pull it up.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
The policy and governance, because that's fair. Policy and governance received that. Because I can come back to next meeting too.
Well, and maybe since it was council that requested the info, if it's going to go to a committee first, then that should be approved in a motion.
I guess my question would be only if you need that information for an item that's on your agenda already? Okay. I think that would be fair if you guys if anybody wants to make that motion to. So what's it relating to? Because I see everybody's puzzled look on their face.
Remuneration policy we're doing tomorrow.
Okay. Yes.
Definitely has something to do with it.
So I will move that the splits of the
what's that?
2022 operating budget meeting costs be provided to the policy and governance meeting on June 25th. May 25th. Yeah, June. I'm trying to get ahead.
You want to speak to that, Councillor Moore?
I'm just wondering, I didn't think council got paid for those meetings. So why are we doing this?
Yes, they did.
Yes, they did.
Have you entered?
For budget meetings. And I think that's why we did discuss not long ago, I brought up that maybe some of our meetings that we are charging for should be given another look. And we did ask for that information. So if there's nothing wrong with having information, we have a motion on the floor to, if Amanda can handle that by tomorrow, I wouldn't ask her to stay up till midnight to do that, but do it first thing in the morning.
I have the numbers.
Okay.
And maybe Mayor Triplett, I'll just address the question. So just to clarify, council claims for any additional meeting that's set by motion of council. So anything that's an additional meeting that's set by motion of council that is an added claimable meeting.
And everybody had it on their expense claim, so no one can say they didn't. And you did so. But I'll have that motion after the CO motion, since it's a CO report, and we'll have the motion to accept the CO report as information. I certainly agree that that's an excellent first quarter report. There are no questions about that because Amanda answered them all already. The notes. Deputy Mayor?
I move that we accept the CAO report as information.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll call the vote. All in favor? That's carried. And then Councillor Windsor's motion.
Luana, did you write it down?
Yes. That the details and split of the operating budget meeting costs be provided to the Policy and Governance Committee for May 25th, 2022.
Exactly that.
Okay, I'll call the vote then. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we have council reports, and I can start with, I just don't know who I don't start with anymore, so I'm going to start with this side. Councillor Windsor, I'll go down there, and then I'll go this side.
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. RDR Mug, you'll receive the written report in the next external reports, but RDR Mug is engaging WaterSmart to look at the impact of 2 subsequent years of drought and how the Acadia request is going to impact that, as well as the long-term climate change and how they're predicting that will affect the Red Deer River water flow over the next 50 years or so. Parkland Regional Library is a really interesting one. I'm probably going to have a request for a decision in the next agenda. I'll be meeting with the other representatives in Zone 9 to discuss what is going on in terms of the number they are using for a population basis for charging municipalities for membership. It is in contravention, in my opinion, of the membership agreement, and that we are going to be discussing. Zone 9 members will get together and we'll discuss the direction that we're going to take. My guess is that eventually we're going to be asking administration to get our legal opinion. Our PRL got their legal opinion, and I think we need to get ours. Ultimately, what they're doing is they're using estimates for the population to calculate what we owe for our membership in Parkland, to the point where they're not even going to use the 2001 census, 2021 census. They are going to use an estimate that the Treasury branch comes up with outside of that. Treasury Board, pardon me. So, there's a whole gamut of things. It's a very large document that has to be gone through, that will be part of the RDFD in the next council meeting, and that we will be looking for direction from this council as to how they want to proceed. Essentially, in my estimation, and it seems from our representatives, the membership agreement needs to be altered to reflect what our funding is that we receive from the Alberta government, to be reflected in the funding that we are charged for, or the population that we are charged for PRL funding. So there'll be way more on that down the road. And the Waste Commission is I wasn't at the last meeting, but we haven't had a meeting since. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing to report from MPC since we have not met all of May. I know Council Bastrick's been really disappointed with that. He missed to see my face every Wednesday. On May 16th, we had a DDAC meeting, which was very, very informative. It was great to hear some input from the rest of the volunteer committee members, and I'd like to reiterate what Alexa said, June 9th. It was just like a get-together with business owners. I think that's a great idea. So I look forward to that at International Grill. On May 18th, there's a Disability Historical Society meeting. Unfortunately, I was under the weather. I was unable to attend. My committee substitute was unable to attend as well, but I do have some minutes that I would like to share. Just a reminder that Jubilee celebration is coming up next week. And so I encourage everybody to pop out at the museum or the library and take part in the celebrations that they have planned. Also, they are in the process of getting grants to fix the elevators at the museum, which would be a great improvement. And that's all I have to report.
Luana, I could ask if Luana, but council, minutes can go into our external reports.
Yes, I just.
Oh, I see. You know that. I should, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Maybe I was clarifying for me and not you.
Councilor Baswick.
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. The last meeting, all documentation was submitted to Joanna on the last meeting, including the agenda and various comments. Nothing really came out of it other than we had great donuts and coffee, and and the price of water remains the same. There was continued discussion about moving our source to Glenifer Lake, but that looks like it's still about 5, maybe 6 years away from being completed because of the horrendous cost involved. So in the meantime, they have some issues with the main intake, which is nothing serious. They've had divers in the water trying to scope it out to see if there's any issues, and it looks like the integrity of the line is good. So it's just a matter of little tune-up here and there. So they have mentioned that the water coming into the system is as pristine as it has ever been in the last 20 years for some reason. So prior to that, it kind of looked like coffee. So we're doing well with producing good water for Didsbury. And that's my report.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
First of all, I have to thank Alexa for the, I think she actually copied my notes on the DDAC meeting, so I have nothing to report because she reported it. She also touched on the Chamber of Commerce, exactly what I was going to say, so very little to add there. So I had the DDAC meeting on the 16th, the Chamber on the 19th, 17th was the Library Board meeting. We had a great presentation there regarding bike racks at the library, about some really neat uses for bike racks in a few different locations. That was presented by Janine Overwater, and I would just like to add on the 16th of June, the Chamber's having an open air market. They have 24 to 25 vendors showing up. They have some road closure on Main Street. So I'm going to invite everyone down there. They also have storefronts that are partaking in this event, and they've been sending out invitations for buskers to come down and be a part of the festivities. So I think it'll be a great evening, an open air market, and get out and support it if you can, please.
Oh, it starts at 6. Is that correct?
Yes.
I attended my first interagency meeting. They just never received an update that the council got that change.
Okay. And that was on the 17th. The details will be in the next package, but I just wanted to confirm with you that all the groups, particularly the FCSS people, are struggling incredibly because their funding has been cut so bad. So what's happening now is that the school FCSS workers actually don't work over the summer anymore due to those cuts. So now they basically aren't able to help a child through the summer. They're gone. And so a child in need of those services doesn't happen until the school starts back up. The Cape Board meeting was on the 18th. I wasn't at the last Cape Board meeting, it was before I was appointed. We have minutes that will be coming out again as soon as the revisions are done because we approved them with changes. And there's some more information there as well. That's it for me.
I just want to follow up on your Doug Griffiths report.
Oh, that's still coming. I still
Okay,
that. Yeah.
You're working on it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
My typing and my vision are...
Okay.
But no, absolutely. Actually, I could tell you one little thing that I found out about it just recently is what they've decided now is that if you went to that leadership camp every quarter, they're going to have an hour-long meeting with all of the people that attended the camp and Doug and his team to go over ideas, you know, what's happened since, and that will be an ongoing, like, they've already booked, they just booked them today, actually, all the way through to next year, so it's pretty good. I consider it a bonus. Yeah.
The key messages from Mountain View Seniors Housing and the first quarter financials are in your external reports. Just keep in mind with the with the first quarter financials that things that are very costly, like insurance, are paid in the first quarter. So this quarter doesn't look as good, but if you figure it's over the time, the first quarter is always going to look a little less good. Another thing that I noticed when I went through a lot of numbers to do analysis is that we have 3 loans for Sundry that are paid off this year. So $165,000 it would be if it was a full year. It's half a year, so it'll be half of that this year. And then from there on, do expect that our requisitions will go down. The other thing that is good news is not in those key messages, and that is that we were successful in hiring a new CAO. We're quite excited about her. She lives in Didsbury. And so she hasn't been working in Didsbury, but she lives here. Anyway, there will be an announcement coming out about that, so I'm not going to preempt that, but I do expect good things. I think there will be a whole new perspective that since we're done with the healthcare and we have opportunities now that we didn't have before. So I'm excited about that. Thank you.
Is she full-time?
Oh, yes.
Like Sam was part-time, right? Like a 0.6 or something?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And traveled a lot. She will be there a lot more.
Nice, well, good for you guys.
Yes.
I'm just going to give you each one of these because it's part of my report, and I heard on the radio, no, it's just I heard on the radio on the weekend that there was a joint detachment meeting for Sundry Olds and Didsbury, so I got a hold of our detachment commander right away, but Ethan and Steve and I have talked about it and discussing a town hall of sorts. You can give these to your team too. No, we've just, administration's in the works of working with protective services to, like our fire department, our municipal enforcement, and the RCMP detachment to put on something like this. This was all relative to Sundry's presentation information, their crime rates, the trouble they're having in the Sundry area, but it definitely was advertised that there was Didsbury Olds information in there. So Steve did clarify that our Staff Sergeant Brown did clarify that we'll be working to make sure that happens in Didsbury. And we are looking for, like maybe before our meeting on the 28th, so that it's not an extra meeting the council will have to go to, but all the public would be invited, and so those are some just some details about that. And so they're all at Bergen tonight, and it's a good thing I listened to the radio all weekend. I think I surprised Steve too to say that he was presenting there. So the other Summer Municipal Leaders Caucus is in Didsbury on June 22nd, and I think that's great news for our community to bring all the municipal leaders, not all of them, there's 4 different sessions in June, but there will be several elected officials here from around the province to come and sit in on our session with Alberta municipalities. So we're excited about that. I attended Mayors of South Central Alberta on Tuesday and Central Alberta Mayors and Reeves on Thursday. I will do a report on Central Alberta Mayors and Reeves and the MSCA you guys have had. But Minister McIver was at the meeting, even after a big day in caucus on Thursday, so he did show up and answer a lot of questions, give a lot of information. And there was 25 mayors and 23 mayors and 2 reeves in attendance, so it was a good meeting.
And that's a wrap from council reports, so we can have
A motion to accept council reports as if, did the lights just dim or was that me?
You smell
Maybe. No, I don't. Motion to accept council reports.
I'll move that we accept the council reports as information.
All right. Councillor Baswick, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, we have correspondence and information. Town of Eckville invitation to parade in the town of Coaldale in support of the Fox Creek AUC. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I move that council accept the presented corresponding items as information. Oh, that was tough.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying from your house, myself.
I was just going to mention that I don't mind going to Eckville. I don't expect to get paid for that. I think it's just a good neighborly thing to do with colleagues. So I'd like council's blessing, though, to be Eckville's guest of honor on our part. Okay, Councillor Windsor's going to make a motion.
But are we going to vote on this one first and then we'll do that motion? And I think also we should respond to them in a writing of some kind or another, just like we did with voting.
Yep. Yes, we'll accept the information, the correspondence information. All in favor? That's carried.
And I will move that council endorse Mayor Hunter going to Eckville to participate in their parade.
Well, I'm probably watching.
Well, whatever, participate however you want.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, well, we'll see what happens. We'll take pictures for y'all.
Okay.
I'll call the vote all in favor. That's carried. The council meeting highlights, I think Councilor Bowser would like us to refer those to Luana.
Yes.
I have time, if everybody's okay with that.
It's got lots of stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay? She does a bang up job on them, so whenever we have time, we will add to them in future meetings. And I will have do you have any questions? We certainly don't have a gallery, but I don't think we sent it anymore. do we? No. So I'll have a motion to close. The closed meeting. You are on your 8 times.
Job.
Okay, all in favor at 8:57. That's carried.
Do you